Welcome back to another episode of R&B Fantasy. I am Boyd. I'm joined by Ryan, of course, and this is
How we
episode
doing?
2. So if you checked out episode 1 or if this is your first time listening to us, welcome or welcome back. We are very excited to be here. Today we're going to be analyzing the rounds 3 through 6 of the startup that we've been doing. Rounds 1 and 2 were analyzed in the first episode, so if you missed that, go back and check it out. And we're also going to be talking about some trades that we've seen go down in our leagues, whether it was made by us or people that were just in our leagues with us. We're really excited for it, and welcome to episode 2.
Yes, thank you. And also thank you for all of those that gave feedback on the first episode. It did way better than we were anticipating. Also, thank you, the Brian and Tom, for letting me know that my
Yeah,
audio
seriously.
sucked. Yeah,
Thank you for all the
because
feedback.
I did not realize that it was a compressor issue that I had connected to my microphone right here. So I removed that and it sounded way better. Obviously, being in this big ass room right here doesn't help with, noise cancellation, but hopefully this sounds a lot better. And please let me know and let us know if there's any other improvements that you think we can make. Obviously, we don't have, crazy budgets, so we can't get super high end equipment, but we'll do our best to make this experience good for everybody involved. So thank you.
Yeah,
All
thank you
right.
so much for the feedback. We really appreciate it. Thomas, Brian, especially. You guys gave
Mhm.
some really good feedback, and it means a lot to us. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. All right. So we'll get
Clip
this
there.
get this up and rolling.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll kick this off. So as we can see on the left, this is one of the trades. There's 4 trades that had gone down in rounds 3 through 6 of our startup. So we kind of wanted to highlight them before we kind of dissected the rounds so that we could better help you guys understand. So if you see them that there's the picks, just come back to this part so that you can just kind of reintroduce it to yourself just in case you forgot what the trade was. So on the left, we saw that MCP wanted to move up from his 408 to the 401. And then also he would then move back 7 spots in the 5th round. So he'd move from his 505 to the 512. Now, I think in terms of the value of what MCP got, it was definitely better because he moved up the same amount of spots that he in the 4th round that he moved down in the 5th round. So I thought from a value standpoint, it was pretty good. But I do think that what the selections ended up actually being uh, played in the favor of Cagresto, who selected Devonta Smith and T. Higgins, which we'll highlight later. And then what we can see on the right was just the trade that we highlighted in the previous episode. Make sure you guys go check our rounds 1 and 2 analyses of our startup. We saw that Perry had moved back from his 105 to acquire the 205 and the 305. So that when we see that first, that 3rd round, that's just how he got that extra pick. And then he also got rid of his 5th round pick as well, which ended up going to MCP. So as we can see, MCP was pretty active in his trading, and his team was, it's pretty top heavy, but I do think that he ended up having a pretty decent draft. So I'm going to the next slide, and you could take this one away, Boyd.
Sounds good. Wait, there's my face. There's my name. So right there, I traded the 407 and a third, and I decided to swap back a couple spots because I thought it was the same tier. Got the 412, did a 2-3 swap, so I ended up in favor with the second. Obviously, I prefer my side because that's why I made the deal. But yeah, that's pretty much that. And then the next one is between Zandy and MC. MC again making another trade. He's a little trade happy boy. He gave up, well, sorry, Zandy gave up the 511 in return, got the 608 and the 25 second, which is, always a good addition to make. And
Hmm.
value wise, it seemed pretty good. I mean, if you can pick up a second and move back around, I mean, that's something that I would probably do.
For sure. Yeah, and also just to highlight on the Boyd's trade, that was actually a trade that we were about to make. I
True.
was planning on moving from the 412 to the 407, and literally the same structure where I'd give up a second and he would give me back a third. But based on who ended up falling, because we discussed this at the end of round 3, who ended up falling, it made me think that okay, there's enough people here in the tier that I would like that I will get at least one of them. So, and I ended up doing so, so that was good for me. And he still got his deal done. So happy days. All right.
Happy days.
So as on the top here, you can see that it actually starts at the back end of the draft because we had a 3rd round reversal. So essentially, for those of you that don't know what a 3rd round reversal is, rather than having it snake as you normally would in redraft, where it would basically go whoever has the first overall pick will then have the last pick of the 2nd round and then the first pick of the 3rd round. However, because that can kind of skew a lot of fairness in dynasty leagues, what'll end up happening is that in that third round, it actually goes back to the person who had the last pick in the first round. So KP, who ended up having the 112 and the 2-1, now also has the 3-1, and then it just reverses the snake for the rest of the draft. So it kind of adds some more balance to the league. And if you are in startups, you definitely will see that trend happening in non third round reversal leagues. So I'll let you take it away, Boyd, and kind of discuss the first few picks of the third round.
Well, we finally saw our first tight end come off the board with Laporta. It seems right now that he is consensus tight end one by a good margin. And KP took him. It's a 0.75 tight end premium league, so I think getting him in round three is actually a really good value. I mean, we've seen years prior tight end, even like 0.5 tight end premium, like they go round two, early round two. Piz was going late round one, early round two, after his rookie year. So at 301, that seems like a good spot for him to go. I mean, I like that value. And then obviously next we lead into Garrett Wilson. And Garrett Wilson was someone that we discussed in the last episode where we were surprised that he didn't go round two just because of about like the hype storm that he has. It seems like a lot of people are really high on him, especially with Aaron Rodgers coming back this year. So 302 to P Fink seems actually pretty good value as well. I'm not sure exactly what wide receiver off the board he was. Let me check.
He was wide receiver 8.
7. Oh wait, it's 8. Sorry. So he was somewhere around there. So I mean that's good value for Garrett Wilson. I mean he's someone that last year was a perennial top 5, top 6 guy, and if you get him at a little bit of a discount after a quality sophomore year, I mean that's pretty good to me. And
Mm-hmm.
then actually this next pick is yours. Do you want to talk about what you did here?
Yeah, sure. So actually, now that I'm thinking about it, he was actually 7 because I picked Puka at the 5, and then it
Oh
went
okay.
AJ Brown, and then Garrett Wilson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and also just to kind of highlight, I did want Laporta here.
Oh, okay.
Laporta's like I've seen people rank in like the late second round, and in a normal tight end premium or like especially in a non tight end premium format, I wouldn't be taking him that high. But in a 0.75, like where he got selected, I think is bang on value because I think that some people are reaching a little bit too much when another like Mark Andrews or Trey McBride are in like that top tier. I don't think there's that much that separates them.
Mm.
So the fact that we saw Laporta and McBride kind of go in these spots kind of, was it made me happy to see that my thinking was kind of confirmed in a certain way. So without further ado, I'll just kind of get into my picks. So as you guys can recall from the last episode, obviously if you haven't, go check it out. I picked Joe Burrow at the 110, and then on the second round, I ended up picking Puka at the 2-3. So I already have a quarterback and a star wide receiver. And because of who was the rest of the people on the boards, I didn't really see as like particular cornerstones for teams. Like Garrett Wilson and Laporta were maybe the last two you could potentially consider that tier of player. I decided to just go in a young QB who I think is going to have a long term contract and who's been very productive in Tua because we do have 6 point passing touchdowns. And then now I don't have to worry about getting, one of those like, later mid round type or QBs that are, it's just like a wasteland of just, I don't know what's going to happen with most of these guys. So I got, that not like super top tier, but he's like, a top 12 QB, I would say.
Yeah, plus he has that
Um,
contract extension coming, so I feel like once he gets that,
mhm,
that'll also slightly boost his value just because of how people's brains work. It seems like
right.
when somebody does get paid, the dynasty market is like, oh, they're committing to him. Let's rise him up a little bit. So I think that's
Mhm.
actually a good spot for him to go.
Yeah, like there's just stability with it, that at least for 2 to 3 years that you could more or less, obviously barring anything crazy, but I would definitely take that over the 104. Don't get me wrong, whoever's at the 104, which you highlighted in the last episode, there's immense value with that. It could be Malik Neighbors, but if it's one of the QBs like May or Daniels, I'd rather just take Tua because Tua's safer. He's clearly produced at a QB1 level for several games over the past few seasons. I don't recall his actual finishes off the top of my head, so shame on me for not having that in my notes, but it is what it is.
He was
But yeah, I
9
think
last year.
he was 9. Okay, perfect. So yeah, he was a QB1, back end QB1, but in a super flex, that's perfect because now I have two QB1s on my team and I'm chilling. And then in terms of Ayuk and McBride, I'll let you kind of discuss those picks.
Yeah, first I want to address the 104.
Oh
Seems
yeah,
like actually a
yeah,
pretty
yeah.
good spot for it. The whole top 6 in this class, so we established last episode, it's a great tier.
Hmm.
Some people might say that taking a rookie pick this early is something that you shouldn't really do. I mean, But I would say that those people are stuck with 2022 draft pick mindset. That's just kind of my thoughts, though. Next is Ayuk. This one kind of caught me off guard, not because I don't think he should go here, just because of the fact that I didn't expect it to happen. Wide receiver 8 is it's pretty high for Ayuk, for like, at least compared to where he usually goes or where the market seems to be at with him. And then obviously my next pick was Trey McBride. I think the gap between Laporta and McBride is way overblown. And I obviously took him here because I think in the .75 tight end premium, he is really, really, really good. In his last 12 games after he kind of took over from the Ertz when Ertz wasn't there anymore, he had 9 tight end 1 finishes, and he was just absolutely explosive. He in this format, he had 3, 4 20-point games, 130 plus. He was just a demon, and that
Mm.
was without scoring very many touchdowns. He only had 3 touchdowns. He was a target hog. He was a production hog, and I just think the gap between Laporta and McBride, at least usually, is just too high. So like I would be open to trading back from Laporta to McBride in any situation and
Mhm.
getting a plus because I don't really see much of a difference there, at least to me.
Right. And you mind if I add something there?
Yeah, go for it.
So, so I believe I did see this metric back during the middle of the season that I'm just recalling now. I don't have it on hand, which is a shame. But after week 9, Trey McBride, I believe, was the tight end number 1. And he was performing better than Travis Kelsey at that point, like from week 9 on, which I think is definitely very noteworthy because I think one thing that we've noticed this year that a lot of Sharp Dynasty players have, now I just call this Sharp, but sometimes we're anything but. Uh,
I'm cool.
yeah, we're ambitious to say the least. Anyways, back on track. The tight end landscape has completely changed this season. Like
Hmm.
there's so many intriguing, breakouts that had happened, especially younger ones. And we're seeing that top level guys like, Travis Kelsey, Mark Andrews is still holding on, but like George Kittle, those two staple guys are, falling down the ranks. Obviously they're aging and they're not doing as they have before. They're still producing. But we've had breakouts with Laporta, McBride, and Joku. Even Evan Engram is still doing. He's having his late career breakout, so I'd still put him up there. There's Hawkinson.
Kincaid as well with his
Yes, there's
quality
also
rookie season.
Kincaid. And then we'll discuss it later. But Michael
And we
Mayer is
forgot
also
Pitts. Pitts
intriguing.
has to be included as well. I mean,
Yeah, I didn't really want
golden
to include
child.
him. Yeah, he makes me upset, but all right. Well, we'll move on from that. But the point is that the tight ends landscape is becoming more deep, which is also making it a little bit easier to kind of trade back within tiers because the tiers aren't very set yet, and this is where you can kind of take advantage of accumulating value.
Yeah, feels like a real pick your
So
poison right now.
for sure, for sure. All right, so moving on, we went to the 307. We can see at the bottom. Dirty, who also selected Anthony Richardson in the first round and Jameer Gibbs in the second round, decided to run on this theme of high upside, riskier picks and selecting Justin Fields. Now, obviously, we know that Justin Fields is a very good fantasy producer. However, in real life, we are uncertain of his actual situation. Obviously, there's many people saying that they're going to trade the first pick and roll with Fields and kind of just see what they can get for it. And just build a huge team around Fields. And other people are saying they're going to trade Fields and build a team around Caleb. We don't know. We're not going to sit here and act like we know. However, that definitely puts a question mark as to what the hell is going to happen with Fields. It's almost certain that he'll have a job next year. I would say that it's a 95% chance that he has a job next year, barring an injury. However, we don't know where it's going to be, how good it's going to be, like who the coordinators are going to be, and if it's a situation that could very end up, it's like a prove it almost type of deal because in terms of his real life, quarterback skills, it's still, there's a lot of criticisms and there's a lot of work to be done. So with that being said, I'll let you kind of take on your thoughts as to how risky Dirty's team is kind of shaken out so far.
He is living on the edge of the sword. He's like, but
Hmm.
as he said, it's only $25 buy-in, so he's wanted to have a little fun with it. He said that in the chat a couple
Right.
times. He's really it's also his first startup since 2022, I believe, so he didn't do any
Oh
last
yeah, I
year.
forgot about
So he's really just trying to have fun with it.
that. Hmm.
Which I admire, but I don't know if I have the guts to take Fields over Purdy just because of the fact that Purdy is established. Purdy and also Purdy's was a hell of a fantasy producer this year. So I don't
Hmm.
know if I have the guts for that, but Fields is gonna start somewhere. I'm like you said, 95% positive. Like I don't see a reality where he isn't starting somewhere. Obviously, unless he's injured. But I just don't think he's not going to be starting. He's has a great fantasy upside. So here, I think you take him here and you wait for the either he gets traded or they rebuild around him, and then he's going to produce during the year fantasy wise, and then his value is going to uptick. So I don't hate it too much. I think it makes sense, especially because
Hmm.
with the same Tua logic, like you don't want to get stuck with around 4, 5, 6. I got stuck with a round 6 quarterback. Like you want to make sure you get that quarterback too, that super flex spot filled with someone who has upside and someone that will carry value. So it makes sense to me, even if
Hmm.
it's a little bit risky.
Right. I definitely agree with that Purdy sentiment. I would much rather have Purdy over Fields in this spot.
Yeah.
Um, and then we saw at the 3-8, no, that's the 3-9, that Nico Collins had gone as the wide receiver 9 off the board. Now, I have Nico Collins in my top 12 dynasty wide receivers, which I'll highlight later based on a trade that I made. However, I think this was a bit of a reach on in terms of value. Like you could have potentially waited on him and gotten him on like, the start of the fourth. However, I think that I would probably choose Nico over Ayuk as it is. And this is kind of that area like the 8 through 12, especially, and then 12 through 18. Like it's so fluid that there's no clear ranking of them past like, Garrett Wilson. Like it's a very there's two like sub tiers that I wouldn't say are that separated where it's very fluid as to who you can get. But I'd say from a value standpoint that Nico Collins is definitely like there's less buyers that you're going to have. So if you wanted to move off of him, it's going to be a little more challenging. Obviously, with Stroud being named offensive rookie of the year and the hell of a season he had. But there's always going to be people that are hesitant to buy him because, Tank Dell wasn't there for part of the season. So that could be like, something holding someone back. So I think from a pure, like, if we want to talk about like a liquidity standpoint in terms of if you wanted to ever, tear down and use it, I would probably go for Olave over him because there's way more buyers for Olave than there are for Collins, even though I am personally a Collins buyer. So, and then obviously then we saw the 105 go. I think this is way too high for the 105. Like, I think that it would actually, I shouldn't say way too high, but I would probably wait till the start of the fourth round because as we'll highlight, later on, there's plenty of guys I'd rather end up taking because this is that, very fluid tier. And if it ends up being some of the QBs, I'd much rather have a lot of these skill position players. Obviously, if it's like Brock Bowers, potentially Malik Neighbors, I would consider it. But a lot of these guys, are very proven. Some of them are a little bit older, but like Christian McCaffrey, but we know that they're studs. So it's kind of one of those places where I'm starting to be a little hesitant on taking rookie picks until a few more guys end up going off the board.
Yeah, and for me, I want all the rookie picks that I can get in the top 6. I don't really know who here that I would have taken over the 105. I mean, there's probably some people that I would take, but I just really like the upside of that pick. So I get the vision that Armani has.
Hmm.
Definitely some risk obviously built in because you don't that's not a proven producer, but that's kind of part of the risk that we take when we play this game. And like I said, I just really want to invest into the top 6 picks in this draft because you could end up with Daniels, May, Neighbors, Bowers, obviously
Hmm.
Caleb and Marvin Harrison, but they're not going to be there at 5. But
Right.
I'm just really interested in getting into that tier.
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I can understand that. It's just a matter of like seeing who's on the board. I'd much prefer the people that are on the board because in a startup, like I still have plenty more picks to make sure my team is like good. So I'm less or I'm, as we can already tell, like, and we'll show later on, I'm very much against, not against, but I'm very hesitant to go for rookie picks because they tend to kind of creep up. And I'd much rather just build a team of guys that I could produce. Like the way I kind of see it is, are the guys that are going right here and the pick that I'm selecting and who's projected to go around that, like, is the upside of that player higher than the production that these people can already give me, and is that like, and then I assess the longevity of it. So like, yeah, you could go for, potentially Brock Bowers or Malik Neighbors, but like realistically, they could still face plant, whereas I think Olave is kind of, a set lock to get, between 14 to 16 points per game for the foreseeable future. So I don't know. That's kind of like just me being a little more risk adverse when it comes to picks, at least.
Hmm. I just like risk. I don't know. I'm just a risky
Yeah,
guy.
I know. I know.
Uh,
I typically will take on more risk once I have a more clear idea of what my team actually is.
that makes sense. That makes sense. In a
Hmm.
startup, you want to fade the risk that way you can build a strong squad.
Right. But when it comes to trades, I'm pretty ambitious, and sometimes I make deals that are definitely could fall flat on my face.
Gotta do
So
that though.
I'll let you take these last few picks and then the start of the fourth round because I kind of just rambled for quite some time.
So Olave 311. Um, I like Olave a lot. I would take him over Nico. I don't know if that's a hot take. I just really like the fact that he's just a target earner. He's a target hog. Obviously, the production hasn't been too great. It's kind of been middling wide receiver two numbers, but I still believe in the upside. I think he's a quality asset, and I think his value is real strong. Next we have
Mhm.
CMC. I mean, you can't go wrong with CMC. He is the RB1. Or not in Dynasty, but he is RB1 in fantasy this year. He is a cheat code PPR wise. He's just a dog. I mean, it's Christian McCaffrey. He's a target earner. He's a great rusher. He gets in the end zone. He had that great touchdown streak. It's a good value here. It's a great value. It's going to put in incredible production into your lineup when he's healthy.
Mhm. I definitely agree. I mean, he's kind of going to be one of those ageless wonders where
Exactly.
he's going to be playing till he's 30 and he'll still be producing.
Yeah, I still think he'll be
Of course,
producing, so
unless he
here
gets
it's just
hurt.
a good value. Obviously, like, injury could play into it, but
Yeah,
when he's healthy, he's a proven producer, and he's a proven elite difference maker for your squad.
correct. For sure. All right. Well, that wraps up the third round, and I'll let you kick it away in the start of the fourth round.
We have one of my favorite picks of the draft here with Mark Andrews. I really love Mark Andrews. If you know me at all, this isn't a surprise to you. Marky Mark is one of my favorite players in the league. Great guy, great player, great tight end, just all around great asset in my opinion. So in the 1.75, you're getting him start around 4. Tight end 3 overall. Like I just really like that. I'm very interested in buying Mark Andrews. I'm very interested in tearing down for him, like from Laporta to Andrews, from McBride to Andrews. Even like if it's like Kincaid plus for Andrews, a slight plus, I'm really interested in that. I just really like Mark Andrews, and I think that just because he got hurt last year, we're experiencing a little bit of a discount that wouldn't have been there if he would have stayed healthy. Because when he stayed healthy, he was producing just as well as he not as good as he did 2 years ago, because 2 years ago was, like, elite cracked production. I mean, he was better than Kelsey 2 years ago, but he's
Hmm.
still an elite difference maker in your lineup. Like, he is really, really, really good.
For sure, and especially with the premium, this is like a
Yep, that
no-brainer.
premium's juicy.
Hmm. So, and then this is kind of also why I wanted to highlight the 104. So, especially if you have a contending team, I would be happy to get rid of the 104 to get Tyreek Hill. Yes, he may end up being only good, useful for the next 2 seasons, but because he also hinted that he may end up retiring at the end of this contract. But those 2 seasons are going to be elite. Like he is just he's been insane. I mean, he was fantastic on the Chiefs. Don't get me wrong, but I feel that him in Miami has just been like another level. Like he's gonna get drafted in like the top 5 of redraft. Like he's good for at least next year. He'll probably still get drafted in round 1 the following year. Like if I'm on a competitive roster, I'd give up the 104 for Tyreek Hill, not a problem, because he's just gonna produce. He's gonna be like how CMC is. Like you get him, you let him die on your roster. You don't get rid of him. You let him produce because that's all he's gonna do. And I'd be more than happy to take him at the 402, especially with having a established team behind him.
Absolutely. Tyreek Hill's he somehow stepped up his production from when he was in Kansas City, which seems
Hmm.
unfathomable, but he has been just cracked. He's been so good in Miami, and
Hmm.
his production speaks for itself. Like you said, he's a top 5 redraft pick, and when you can get a top 5 redraft pick in round 4, it's good value.
For sure. And then obviously we have Pitts next. This is kind of more the range where he kind of should be going, but I also think that it's still, I've been a huge Pitts believer. I don't have much of him, and the one spot I do have him in, I'm just gonna hold on for dear life. Like I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know how this offense is going to function. I hope that he gets, a piece of the pie. I definitely think though that out of Drake London and Bijan, Pitts is the most likely to potentially not get a huge jump from the change from Arthur Smith. But that's just me kind of, anticipating it. It's not really based on any sort of facts. So take that with a grain of salt, and you obviously can make your own conclusions. But Pitts is clearly talented. We saw that based on his rookie season, but he's just been so like disappointing, both from seeing his film and seeing how his routes were not as good, obviously because he had an injury, but I don't know what's going to happen. Like, there's nothing that really tells me that he's going to be that end of first round startup pick that he was, a year or two ago. Like, I have no idea. He's kind of you have to just, hold on for dear life with him because you're investing, a top for, fourth round pick on him. I don't know which way it's going to go. I would not make this pick, but I can understand why you would make this pick. It's just kind of one of those things where the riskiness of it is extremely, it would make me very scared, and I would not want to, introduce that into my lineup.
That's fair. But let's pretend this is a drum. I'm banging it for Kyle Pitts. I mean, I love Kyle Pitts. He had 1,000 yards rookie year. He was great in college. He was the highest drafted rookie tight end ever in the NFL draft. And last year wasn't great. He was coming from an knee injury though, and Arthur Smith was there, so I'm not entirely washing it out of my mind, but I'm putting more stock into the past history of him. Obviously, that rookie year, his college production, and I think he's just an incredible receiver, like tight end. Like he is really good, and I would like to see what he does next year when he's a year removed from the injury because it looked like it was nagging him last year. And I'm just still a believer. Like I'm going down with the ship is kind of what I'm saying. Like I am going to keep
Hmm.
sinking with all my Kyle Pitts shares until they are around 30. I don't care. Like he's gonna be on my roster forever because I so
Oh, for sure.
heavily believe in the upside there. That I just can't like get rid of him.
Hmm.
I'm gonna keep banging the Pitts drum because he really could be an elite difference maker tight end.
Yeah, I agree. It's not to say that I'm against like buying Kyle Pitts. I'm actually trying to buy Kyle Pitts in some spots. It's just a matter of like in a startup, like I had said, like the methodology for the way I draft is different, and I would not want to give up somebody like DJ Moore who got picked 2 rounds later for Kyle Pitts on any roster that I have. But I can understand why you would draft Kyle Pitts over him. It's just a matter of if the price is right, I'm gonna buy him every day. Like if I can get him for someone that's going in like the 5th or 6th round, then hell yeah. But taking him at the start of the 4th is just too risky for my taste. But it's not like I'm saying that it's a bad pick. It's just a pick that I personally wouldn't make.
I can see that. I can see that.
So yeah. So we've exhausted plenty of of Kyle Pitts. So why don't we just move on to the next couple picks and you can kind of take that away.
We've got Michael Pittman as Dynasty wide receiver 1 here. He went 404, wide receiver 12, and I don't think I would have taken him here. And it's nothing against really him. It's more against the cost, and it's more with the concerns with AR at quarterback. I'm not saying that AR isn't going to be able to feed him, but Gardner Minshew is a guy who just force feeds his receivers. He really likes targeting one person, not just one person, but you know what I mean. He really likes hyper focusing on someone, and Pittman was that guy. And I just don't know if that production is going to be repeated again in the future. And to me, it seems like his value is hitting a high where I would like to cash out if I could for DJ Moore,
Hmm.
for whoever. Like I just think it's someone that I wouldn't take here this high.
Now, I know you're going to take this next thing, but I'm going to interject here. Would you take the 106 or Pittman?
It's 106.
I definitely could get behind that.
Just because I think at worst Brock Bowers, and Brock Bowers is a really great prospect. He is going to go very high in the draft, and I think
Hmm.
he could easily end up being tight end 1 after 2 weeks.
Hmm.
I think the value will be on the Brock Bowers side.
Yeah, for
Or
sure.
at worst, it's Neighbors, and I really like Neighbors, and I absolutely prefer him over Pittman, even though it's the unknown.
Hmm.
Obviously, it could bite me in the ass, but Neighbors is such a high end prospect that I would prefer him too as well.
Hmm. And even if things like change, like even if you got one of the QBs, that would still be, I would probably
Absolutely,
still
yeah.
have him.
Somebody, if one of them fall, I mean that's just cake.
Like realistically, I don't see Pittman ever being a startup 404 in any time in the future. Like, because he's 26, so he's
Yep,
kind of
he
going to hit
seems
that
like
age
a now
apex
or
of
never.
value. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's his
So I'll let
moment
you
in the
kind of also
sun.
highlight DJ Moore, our other 27-year-old.
DJ Moore's a dog. What is there to say? I mean, he's damn good. DJ Moore is damn good at football. He proved it when he was in Carolina with scrubs at quarterback, and last year he just put that upside down display with Justin Fields at quarterback. If he gets Caleb Williams, wheels up. I mean, like, absolutely
To the
wheels up.
moon.
Even with Justin Fields, he's still great. Like, it's obvious. Like, I have no qualms or qualms or with the pick. Like, I think DJ Moore here is
Mhm.
just it makes sense.
I also think that he's going to go in the like end of the first round of 12-team redraft leagues next year. Like that. That to me at this level, like this round, like him and Tyreek Hill are extreme values here.
Yeah, especially if they had Caleb. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
I agree. All right, so we kind of highlighted the 106 a little bit, and I think that this is a pretty good spot for it. But if you don't have anything to say, I might just end up skipping over it and kind of discussing your 407
Yeah, I think
briefly.
we've talked. I think we've talked enough
Yeah.
about our
Okay.
thoughts on the top tier rookie picks by them.
Perfect. All right, so I'm just going to kind of briefly give my opinions, and then you can kind of explain why you picked Waddle here. But I think that this is a pretty bang on spot for Waddle. I mean, this range of wide receivers with Devonta Smith, Tank Dell, Rice, like you could rank them however you want, and it's all basically up to personal preference because they're all valued essentially the same, and it's impossible because anybody that you look at, their ranks have them all different. They're all in the same spot, but they're all in different, like, in a different order. So I think getting Waddle is definitely a pretty decent pick here. Obviously, if you see the upside I myself do, then it would make a lot of sense to pick it. But I'll let you kind of speak to why you chose him over the other receivers on the board.
Well, this was the spot where I actually traded back, so KP ended up picking Waddle. But I will
Oh
say that
yes, you're right. I didn't even see that. Notice that.
well, Waddle was the pick that I was gonna make if the trade didn't fall through. Like it fell through with you. I was trying to move back a couple times. It just ended up
Mm-hmm.
working out with KP.
So
But
small on my
I
screen.
do agree that yeah, right. I do agree that Waddle is the person that I would have taken here.
Okay.
He just produces like, last year obviously was a knock in production, but he still had over 100 targets, still had over 1,000 yards. His touchdown production wasn't there. It was the worst touchdown
Hmm.
production of his career. But like in his sophomore year, he had over 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. So like that upside has been put on display. And Tyreek Hill isn't going to be there forever. So I just makes sense. Like it's a asset that I don't think is going to depreciate in value, but can absolutely go up in value if that makes
For
sense.
sure. And I definitely like the fact that you were able to still get Jonathan Taylor in a second for basically Waddle in a third. I think that that's insane value that you ended up acquiring.
Yeah, yeah, I think that was good value too, but I get
Hmm.
why KP made that trade because
Yeah,
it's a
for
three
sure.
wide receiver league, three flex, and Waddle is young, so the
Hmm.
value like I said, his value is really insulated compared to a running back, which is obviously has a lot of concerns anytime you take one.
Right. And if he's getting his guy that he believes Waddle's going to be good, then only giving up a second is, it makes sense. Like you're not giving up a whole lot to get a
Yeah,
guy that you really want. And then we kind of highlight for the next one is Devonta Smith at the 408. That one I definitely like a lot. Like Devonta Smith is one of those guys that I haven't really decided how I am because I've sold him in one spot and then I've also bought him in another. So it's all about the price, I guess, for
yeah,
Devonta Smith. He's kind of a hold for me, I guess, if I'm also buying and selling because I don't like obviously AJ Brown is likely still going to be there for, a season or two, but he's still produced at an insane level. Obviously his like when he was in the playoffs this year, he'd had a monster game. I definitely think that he is capable of wide receiver one outcomes and he is a wide receiver two himself. It's just a matter of how much are they going to give him when AJ Brown is there. Because if AJ Brown is not there in a season or two, I think that Devonta Smith will easily be the wide receiver one. Like I'm fairly confident to say with the way that they target him now as their number two, he could still be the number one in their offense. It's just a matter of who do they end up bringing in to replace AJ Brown? If is it someone that's above Devonta Smith's level or below? And if it's a rookie, I definitely think Devonta Smith will be fine. But this is a good spot for Devonta Smith.
yeah. It seems like people are getting a little bored of him
Yeah,
because he's
he's
just like
definitely
he's a
not a
proven
shiny toy.
producer. Yeah, exactly. He doesn't have the new shiny toy syndrome that the rookie picks have, or that other assets that Haken have had.
Hmm.
And it seems like people are just kind of getting bored with what he is, but with what he is really good
For
and a
sure.
good asset to have.
And I'll let you take this next pick since you are a Lions fan, but also a Dynasty player. So I want to know what your thoughts on this Goff at the 409.
I like Jared Goff. That man got me my first playoff win I've ever seen in my life, but I would not take him in round four of a startup.
Hmm.
I just the fact that I prefer the skill players that go around him here, which is why I like to grab ideally uh, two quarterbacks in the first 3 rounds. That way I don't have to pass on these skill players for a guy like Goff. But I mean, the production's there. He's been a top 10 quarterback back to back years. There's not
Hmm.
really like I don't really have an argument for like against his production. It's more or less just the fact that as a dynasty manager in like a three wide receiver league, three flex, it's just I prefer the skill players in the situation.
Hmm. And I also want to highlight that this was the first QB that Flankenberry also
True,
selected.
true.
So that is mainly the reason why he got selected this high. But at the same time, this is also why you want to get a QB in those first 3 rounds. So you don't have to take Jared Goff this high and he doesn't have to be your QB1. Not to say, not really a knock on him, but it's just, in terms of the sustainability of your team's production, it definitely is not the most ideal pick to be in or
Exactly
spot to
because
be in.
what 2, 3 years ago, Jared Goff was you couldn't get him for you couldn't sell him for a second. So
No,
like
he was worth nothing.
it's just the fact that like his obviously he's gonna get an extension from Detroit, which is gonna boost his value the same way with Tua
Mhm.
did, but it's just the fact that he's not new shiny toy and he's not a big name on the market kind of thing. Where so I would probably prefer the skill players to go around.
I agree.
But
And
the
then
production's
just
there.
yes, for sure. And now I'll just kind of go through these next two picks because these were the two players that, if you guys recall from earlier in the show, I was planning on moving up from the 410 to the 407 for a second, but then I realized that Tank Dell, Rice, Waddle, Smith would all be one of them would be there, and that's kind of the tier I wanted to be in. And I just kind of flipped a coin. I legitimately just flipped a coin as to who I wanted between Tank Dell and Rice. Because I already have Puka, I already have my two, QBs. I don't have Rice or Odell in any other league. So I'm just like, okay, who am I gonna get? I just let I didn't actually flip a coin. I told Siri heads or tails.
Hey,
And
Siri flipped it for you though.
no, yeah, Siri got me the short king and Tank Dell. I definitely am very happy with this pick. He's gonna be tied to Stroud for the near future for the at least 3 seasons as long as they're both healthy. So I am happy to take Tank Dell as my wide receiver too. I think he could easily be a top 12 wide receiver in the next few seasons, or if he's top 18, I would be happy with that as well. But it's not to really say that he's any better than Rice from a value or production standpoint. It's just a matter of like choose your poison. And then
Absolutely.
and then now that I've kind of highlighted the 410 and then Rice got picked at the 411, I'll let you kind of speak to why you chose this time, why you chose Jonathan Taylor in the fourth round.
Yeah, so people just don't like running backs. I don't know. Jonathan Taylor got a new contract. He got paid. He was great last year in the games that he played. I don't know. It just seems like people just don't want to draft running backs because they want the wide receivers, which I get. Obviously, I love wide receivers, but if I'm going to be able to get a guy who has RB1 upside or at least top five RB upside in late round four, almost round five, and get a second on top and only give up a third for it, like I'm going to do that every day of the week. I don't think JT should have even been here, personally. So I was really happy to get him here.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's insane value. And to also highlight, it was 12 picks from when CMC was selected,
A
and
huge
he went
gap.
on the board as RB5. So I think that's insane value, especially when you see who he picked in the next round, which we'll move to right now.
Round
Oh,
five. Here we
my
go.
StreamYard is giving me issues here. There we go.
Yelp
Next
duck,
slide.
damn it.
Oh, well, well, well. Kyron Williams at the 501. Now, from a value standpoint, I don't know if I would make this pick, especially when Achan was on the board. But I also think that people are writing off Kyron too quickly. I think that after the monster season he had, I don't think that he's going to be replaced. I think he's got at least another season that of what he just produced in store. However, if it's only one season, I don't think I would have taken him that high. I don't know what your thoughts are on the matter.
I mean, like, you cannot come up with an argument against Kyron that involves any fantasy numbers because he was damn elite in everything. He was a great asset to have, and his points per game was crazy. So like there's no argument to be made against him there production wise because his production was absolutely cracked. The only argument that you can make against him is the fact that I believe Sean McVay has drafted a running back every single year since he's been in LA. So there's that thing, that trend, and there's also the fact that he is a running back. So, people just don't like them as I established in my last pick. But the production is there. It makes sense to me production wise. So I get it.
Hmm.
Like he averaged over 20 points per game. Like he just was an elite difference maker on your squad. So I totally understand why KP took him here. I mean, like it's hard to argue against the production that he had, and I don't see him getting replaced either. If anything, I see
Hmm.
Zach Evans getting replaced as the backup because they didn't like him at all. So I
Right.
wouldn't be surprised if they draft a, or maybe even sign, I guess, maybe like a cheap person to be their backup just in case Kyron goes down. But I think Kyron's going to be their guy again next year. It doesn't make sense to me
Hmm.
for him not to be. I feel like they can allocate those resources elsewhere rather than trying to replace a guy who was great last year.
Yeah, for sure. I also want a brief side note. I was actually going to take Zach Evans in the 20 like second round of our startup, but you just made me not want to take that pick now with
And
that
I
comment.
really liked Zach Evans last year. I drafted so much of him. Ask Big.
Hmm.
I
Oh no, I
absolutely
did too.
drafted so much Zach Evans, and it just did not work at all.
Yeah, no. I
Should have
mean,
drafted
it
Kyron, I guess.
it is what it is.
You
I
live and you
thankfully
learn.
had a Kyron in a lot of spots, so I kind of held on to that ship. So
You live and
that
you
was
learn.
beautiful. Hmm. So the next two picks were two wide receivers. 502 was JSN, and the 503 was Drake London. I think that JSN. I don't think that his rookie season was as bad as people are making it out to be. Like he did have 60 receptions in a run, or at least a neutral offense, and with two other options ahead of him. I think that 60 receptions as a rookie is a pretty good benchmark to hit. It definitely doesn't make me feel confident that he's going to be, this bona fide stud. But at the same time, it doesn't also make me write him off. Like I think he's going to be about where I valued him before. This is a little higher than where I had him, but I don't think that he's going to be a bust or like that he's going to disappoint based on certain expectations. Like I think he'll hover potentially at 16 points per game at his peak, which I think is pretty decent. But I'd much rather take Drake London, which I did at the 503. I think with the new coordinator, he's hovered on high 20s, like low 30s target shares, for most of his career, and just like super run heavy offenses. Arthur Smith, obviously, we can, beat the drum about his, whole spiel in Atlanta, but we'll move on from that. Like, I think that London, this is his year to kind of break out where he's going to be a monster. I'm pretty happy to say that that's, kind of a hot take, but not really. I think London is, especially as my wide receiver three, that would be like, huge. Like my first three receivers, obviously Puka's top 12 already, but I wanted to get two guys that were out just outside that top 12 that I think could easily make that jump into the top 12 within the coming years.
Yeah, I don't know how you look at what London has done in his career and you look at what JSN did in his rookie year and you prefer JSN. London,
Hmm.
like he was in that Atlanta offense versus the Seattle offense, and London has just been everything that you could really hope for, at least metric wise. And I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me to not take London over JSN at this point because
Hmm.
JSN had a pretty middling rookie year. And I would have, with how much hype he got as a prospect, I think if he really was that good of a prospect, that he would have produced better. That's just too harsh to say because he had Metcalf and Lockett, but look at what CeeDee Lamb did in his rookie year. Um, he produced even with other high-end target competition like
Right.
Cooper, Gallup. They both had over 100 targets, and CD still put up over 900 yards. Shout out to Fantasyscape James for posting that one. It's a good little
Hmm.
tidbit. But yeah, I love Drake London. I fucking love Drake London. Yeah, everybody knows this. I have so much Drake London. It's insane. Drafted so much
Hmm.
of him in 2022 rookie drafts, and I don't like nothing that he's done has made me like him less because they haven't put shit around him. Like that Desmond Ritter, Taylor Heineke, like I this really haven't done anything that makes it seem like they're really trying. And I'm excited to see what they do this year. I'm excited to see what Drake London does in a real offense.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that he could easily hit 1,200, 1,300 yards,
Yeah, he's so
have
good.
close to 100 receptions and, 8 touchdowns. Like that is not a line that I would be, surprised with in any way. That's what I would hope he does, even if not better, but that would definitely be something that I think is pretty achievable.
Yeah, 110 targets in back-to-back years in an offense that really didn't pass much is incredible. I mean, his target
Hmm.
share domination is crazy. He earns targets like it's nobody's business.
Right.
He has to get them to pay rent. He fucking loves
Hmm.
targets.
I
And
doubt that they're
eventually
going to
that'll turn
add
into
anyone.
production.
Right. For sure. All right. Well, I'll let you kind of hammer home these last three picks here.
So I really like Deshaun Watson at round 5. I mean, his contract is absorbent. Like it's so large there's no way that he's not starting. And I think round 5, it's a great value. I was actually hoping he would fall to me. Um, I guess my pick in a minute, but I was hoping Watson would fall to me so that way I could get him because I think he's really underrated, obviously for icky reasons. He's not a good person. I totally get why people don't like him, but I try to separate some things, and eventually I just gotta take players that I think are values, and I think he's a value here in a 6-point passing touchdown league, and that contract is going to keep him starting. And when he did start, I just want to highlight the fact that when he did start last year, before the injuries, he was quarterback one numerous times. Like not overall, but he was at quarterback one numerous times. And it seems like a lot of
Hmm.
people are trying to knock the fact and try to make it seem like his production was worse than it was. But I think he's a good value here. I think he's a good veteran to target.
Yeah, for sure. And he's not even past 30, so I definitely think that he's got plenty of gas left in the tank
Yeah,
and with both his legs and his arms. So I'm intrigued to see what he ends up doing going forward. It's definitely a buy for me in Dynasty if you can get him for the right price.
absolutely. And it seems like you can,
Hmm.
um, because a lot of people just don't like him.
I'd give him anything past the 107 for him,
Yep,
personally.
same, and I don't think you really, have to in some leagues. I think
No,
you'd be
definitely
able to
not.
get him for 110, 11, 12, maybe
Hmm.
even an early second, I mean, plus something, like,
Hmm.
I'm not really sure, but a lot of people are just are sick of him and don't want him anymore, but he's gonna be starting next year for the Browns, and
Hmm.
he has Mark Cooper, Njoku, Elijah Moore, like, he's got weapons to throw to, and when he played this year, he played well, at least
For sure.
fantasy-wise.
Yeah, he's like the last QB that's really on the board that really has that like, top 6 QB upside in his
Absolutely.
locker. So,
Absolutely, and I would take him over Goff just because of that upside and because of the fact that his contract is so large that he's just gonna keep starting,
mhm,
and his
for
upside is
sure.
top 5, and I don't think Goff has the top 5 upside.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, little friends there. Mine were just playing actually for people that were pretty detail oriented. You saw that I muted there for about a minute because they were just playing right next to me and making a lot of sounds. So,
I got a
all
little
right.
cat.
So, what are your thoughts on the 505 and the 506? Obviously, you made the 506 selection.
It just seems like another case like with Devontae Smith, people are just getting tired of T. Higgins, obviously, the injury things, where he just plays and then doesn't get any targets because Zach Taylor doesn't get really care. But I think T. Higgins is a dog. He is a person who could be a wide receiver one on a team. I'm really excited to see what happens with him because his contract's up. Good value here. I like T. Higgins. I think it just makes sense.
Hmm.
What about you? What do you think? Are you cool with T. Higgins here, or would you taking someone else, or what are you thinking?
I mean, I've never been a big T Higgins guy. It's not really my hate, like I have hatred towards him. It's just I've always preferred other guys that have been valued around the same point as him. Like
Hmm.
I'd much rather have Metcalf, Flowers, London. Like I wouldn't say JSN, but he's kind of one of those ones where he's also a free agent this year, so he may not even end up coming back to Cincinnati. So that's also another point that would make me hesitate to get him because obviously, like I said, I don't like to take on a huge amount of risk with my top, picks in a startup. But I still don't knock the talent. Like he's definitely, even with Jamar Chase in the field, he's still a fantasy producer. It's just a matter of where he ends up going will very much determine his trajectory for the next few years.
Yeah, I think I'd actually I know I definitely would trade Metcalf and Flowers for him if I could. He was a guy who's going round 3 of startups the past couple of years. So round 5 just seems like a really good value, and I really believe in the upside of Higgins. I think
Hmm.
he's really good when he plays. I think, and sucks that he's had these injury issues, but he's really good at football, and I just like
Okay.
that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can guess for any of those listeners, like if you're on the fence about T. Higgins, whether you like him or not, you can kind of use that information to, know who to target.
Absolutely, yeah, we got two differing perspectives here. So,
Hmm.
but next up, one of my picks, just to highlight where I'm at in my draft, taking two RBs, taking Justin Jefferson, Trent McBride, and Kayla Murray. So, got one quarterback, and I took a second RB before I took a second quarterback, which probably gets shunned by a lot of people, but Devon Achan, round 5, that just I don't, it just seems silly to me. He's going round 2 of redraft right now. His upside is immense, as we saw in the numerous games where he absolutely exploded and destroyed the world. And here is RB7. I like that. I was very happy with the pick. Someone's got to take RBs when they fall, and I guess I'll just be the guy that does it.
Yeah, and then you ended up being tight end university by the end of it. So,
Oh yeah, yeah. A little community college that I've built. We'll get to that.
hmm
Not this
yeah,
episode, but we'll get to that.
for sure. I wait. You made. I'm pretty sure you made a selection in the 6th round, so we'll cover the start of it at least. The inaugural member. So yeah, following that, we have at the 507 and the 508, we have the rookie picks of the 107 and the 108. And I think that this is a product of shiny toy syndrome, which you've highlighted multiple times. If you obviously haven't checked out our rookie breakdown, make sure you check out the first episode. But this is where the tier break happens, and this is where things start to get a little murky because we run into the thing where you have a Dunze, you have that fluid range of wide receivers, potentially JJ McCarthy. There. This is kind of the area where I don't want to deal with this. Like they're like Metcalf on the board. Would you rather have a Dunze or Metcalf? Answer that question. It's probably
I
Metcalf.
would rather have the 107 over
Hmm.
Metcalf just because of the value installation there, and I think for the fact that I could probably flip it for something that I would prefer over Metcalf, but I would prefer
Hmm.
Metcalf over Odunze because Odunze has a
Right.
lot of red flags in his profile as a prospect.
Hmm.
Kratos the fourth on Twitter wouldn't like me saying that, so don't tell him I said
Yeah.
that. He seems to defend fucking Roma Dunze every single time he gets brought up.
Yeah.
But I think as an asset, I would prefer the 107. In my last startup, I think I took the 107 around the same range where Dirty took it here, just
Hmm.
because of the fact that I like the upside to be able to trade it when rookie drafts roll around. I think there's at least going to be one guy who really likes Roma Dunze in my league, and I'd
Hmm.
ideally like to cash out to that guy. But the 108, I don't think should have been going this close to the 107 yet. With how
Gotcha.
at least with how I think things are shaking out draft wise, because Odunze is going to get supposedly top 10 draft capital, so that right there is going to make a lot of people really like him.
Hmm.
So
But that's
the sell opportunity should be there.
right. But that's also banking that he gets that top 10, which is could be very
You never know.
likely.
You never know.
And at
Yeah.
the same time, it's like ideally you'd want to flip that 107 for people that got taken ahead of him, like Achan, Higgins, Watson, London, like a lot of people maybe in
Yeah.
the next round. So if that's achievable and you think that's achievable, then I can definitely understand it. But knowing the league that we're in, nobody's probably going to do that because we all think very similarly.
Yeah,
There's
but
very
even
few
if it's
people
like
that,
not trade for someone ahead, if it's like trade for
yeah,
someone behind but get a plus, that's something I'm interested too. Like even if
that's
it's to
also
get
another,
back from the 7 to maybe like the 9, grab McCarthy if McCarthy gets first
yeah.
round capital, but get a second on top or whatever it is on top. That
Hmm.
interests me. So it's just the fact like the fluidity with the pick where you can really do a lot of different
That's
things is
fair.
kind of why I prefer it.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point. And then obviously for
But
the
you never
listeners
know.
now you get
Like you
two
said, you never
two
know.
perspectives on the matter. I obviously have my opinions. I because the funny thing is like as you guys will know, I'm more risk in. You'll see with the trades. I like to take on more risk when I know what my team is, but like when I don't know fully what my team is, I don't know. It's just something about the picks and who goes around them. I much just prefer the players. Like I don't know what it is. And that's also why like I ended up like stacking like the late seconds and early thirds because I like the idea of potentially getting the running backs that could fall there as rookies. So were you just checking your hairline with that or
No, I was taking a picture of my cat. She's sleeping on my computer. I wanted to
oh
show you guys. This is what I'm dealing with right now. I got my cat
that's freaking
snoozing on my
hilarious.
PC. But
Hmm.
yeah, this like
I
I think
got
that's like what's great here is that we don't agree on everything, so we're getting like two
yeah,
different perspective, and we'll get to that
for
more
sure.
like when trades roll around. Like you like to take a little bit more
Hmm.
risk. I kind of sometimes don't, sometimes do, because like you said, I want to see what my team looks like.
Yeah. And I guess you can make the same case for the 108. So we'll move on past that since we've kind of,
Yeah, well,
exhausted
you
our
cover
thoughts
that a
on
little
this.
bit.
So I knew you when before the show started that you were pretty adamant about your dislike for this pick. So I'll kind of let you take this one away.
I just
Freaking gnat in
like
my
the
face.
production was there. Like he was a top 5 running back in PPR last year, but like Shadowlight's just a jag. Like, he's just another guy to me. His as a rusher, he is not good. I don't know if that's a hot take, but he's just not a good rusher. Obviously, a great target earner, and obviously, great. Not great, but he's a good receiving back who gets a lot of targets and gets feasts most of his production there. But as a rusher, he's just not. He's just another guy. And to me, in this round 5 area, I 100% would just prefer to take somebody I have more confidence in because RBs are shaky assets. So if I am going to take an RB, I would want it to be JT, who's a proven, top RB1 overall or has a huge contract extension, like that value installation's there, or Achan, who has proven this upside and is on a small rookie deal. And next year, like Moster's getting older, like the upside's really there for him. But with White, it just seems like now is the time where his value is maxing based off his last production. Obviously, he could have another great year, but I just would prefer to take assets that I have more confidence in. Spoilers, like Travis Etienne, who went after him. Obviously, you guys have noticed that he hasn't gone on the board yet. I would prefer ETN just straight up. So to me, it just isn't a pick that I would have made, but I can understand why because of the production. But it's just not how I like to play Dynasty.
Hmm. I agree, and I would much prefer like because him and Kyron are in similar boats in terms of what had happened, but I'd much prefer a straight swap for Kyron than White if I had that
Yeah,
opportunity.
like that would be awesome if I could flip that. That'd be
Yeah,
incredible.
even if I give like a third and a fourth on top, I would
Yeah,
much
like
prefer
that's a small
Kyron in that.
plus. Like I
Yeah,
would take that just because I'm
hmm
more confident in him as an asset. Like I think
for
like
sure,
the Rams like him, and I think he like as a rusher he was really good last year, and
for
Rashad
sure.
White didn't have that for me.
Hmm. And then just to kind of like, ping off that point, I would much rather have the next three wide receivers that were taken over Rashad White. So you could, if you could flip him straight up for either of these wide receivers, but maybe you add a small plus, like a third to it, I'd be on board for that. So just so we can kind of get moving along a little bit, we had Metcalf at the 5'10, Zay Flowers at the 5'11, and Jordan Addison at the 5'12. Now, in terms of how I rank them, that's probably in the order that I would rank them. However, I do think Addison was picked a little bit higher than I would probably like to take him, but we'll kind of get to that in a second. But I think Metcalf is kind of one of those other wide receivers that people have just kind of like, forgotten about. Like he's know what they have with him, but at the same time, he's not going to really gain a whole lot of value. But if Lockett leaves and it's just him and JSN, he could, take very minor, like, leaps towards being that wide receiver one that he can produce. I mean, Boyd, on hand, do you happen to have where he finished this year?
DK,
Um,
he was the wide receiver 21.
okay, he was the wide receiver 21,
But
and that
but
was.
his production difference compared to the year before where he was wide receiver 16 was only like a point
Mhm.
0.4 difference. So that kind of just
Okay,
shows like how other people produced instead. But like he
right.
had nearly 120 targets. He had 119. He had another 1,000-yard year, over 1,100 yards. He got his touchdown production up ticked a little bit from the year before. He had 8 compared to 6. Like, it just seems like another case where people are just bored of him. Like how we were talking about
Hmm.
Devonta Smith, like Waddle, like people just kind of seem to just be getting bored of DK Metcalf because he is not the new shiny toy.
Hmm. I agree. Yeah, I definitely got to have more of these stats on hand for when we do these. I have all the notes on how I value everybody, but the stats definitely would help a little more.
Yeah, if you have any like I have the draft open so I can just look at their thing
Hmm.
and I got
Oh
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Appreciate it.
No problem, man.
So anyways, moving on. This is kind of where we get to like the rookies that have kind of moved up in value. Now, I personally like Zay Flowers here. I know Boyd is not the biggest Zay Flowers person, and we're both kind of off on Addison at this point. Like I would sell him everywhere I had him to get guys within this certain range because I'm not very confident. Neither is Boyd on this outlook. So I'll kind of let you kind of speak to your thoughts on these two wide receivers here.
It just yeah, like I just I don't have too much confidence in them being like elite difference making production people.
For sure.
Obviously they're good. They are established and they had good rookie years and there's no reason to dislike them. It's just the fact that I just dislike the cost. It just seems a little too high for me compared to what you could get like on the trade market. Like we'll look later. I've traded the Addison share, I've traded the Flowers share. We'll see what I got for it later on. But it's just the fact that I'm okay to breaking down and grabbing veterans that are going to produce, at least in my opinion, in the same range or higher compared to what the cost is for this one.
Mhm.
I
I
bagel.
definitely agree. I would definitely, if I was looking to get them, I would try to trade someone that's like a couple tiers down to trade up because it's going to be hard to kind of tier down with them because you're probably not going to get enough on top to kind of match that wide receiver two production that they could give you. And they're
Yeah.
also a little more value insulated as well.
Yeah, that youth upside, the
Yeah.
shiny new toy thing as we've established, like
Hmm.
they have those on their side, which is very helpful
Yep.
for Dynasty.
For sure. All right. So we talked about the fifth round for quite some time, and now we're going to move on to the last round that
6.
we are covering for today. We're currently in like round 22, but that was, excuse me, we've been going on this draft for about a week and a half at this point.
Yeah, it's been a
So without
while.
further ado, I'll let you kind of kick it away with Travis Etienne.
Yeah, so this is where ETN went. As I said before, I would take him over Rashad White. I was surprised that he went round 6. I think I said it in the chat as well. It just caught me off guard. I mean, he was really good last year. Obviously, his second half season wasn't as great as his first half, but it still wasn't bad. I feel like a lot of people are knocking it when it wasn't as bad as people are saying. He was the RB3 last year. He had over 1,000 rushing yards. He had almost 500 receiving yards. So it's not like he can't receive. He had or isn't able to be a good receiving back. He had over 70 targets, which is, I mean, obviously really, really good. Like he's able to produce there. He had more targets than Rashad White last year. I'm just gonna throw that out there for you. And he was RB3, so he like was producing. Obviously, most of that came in the first half, which I already said, but that's kind of how variance goes. Next year, all that production in the first half could happen in the second half. That's just kind of how football works. We don't know when the production is going to happen. We just know that if he has the upside for it, I'm going to want him on my team. And round 6 seems like a really good cost to pay for him.
I definitely agree. Yeah, I don't really have much to add on that because I was actually going to make that point about the first half production, but you definitely highlighted that, which is a key note of the variance that we see in fantasy football. So we can't expect guys to, be 16 point per game players and then that's what they drop every week. That's like mixed in with like 30-point performances and 8-point performances. Like it's
We got
just the
highs
way
and
it
lows.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like obviously because, game scripts happen, coaching, they have different methodologies for each team they play. So it's just kind of one of those things where you can't predict on a week by week basis what they're going to do. You can just predict a relative range. So moving on, we have two wide receivers at the 602 and 603. Now these are guys that I would actually trade the Addison and Zay Flowers to get with potentially pluses on top, because we can see later that actually did happen, and involving two people that isn't either me and Boyd. But Jaden Reed is kind of one of those guys where he was not a prospect I really was aware of coming in. Like he was selected, at the end of the second, early thirds in rookie drafts last year. Obviously, he was a second round pick in the NFL, but his college profile coming in was not very indicative of a successful wide receiver. But as we've seen this past year, that a lot of the receivers that did well were actually ones that weren't, that didn't have the profiles that previous wide receivers that were successful had. So, anyways, I would probably look to get Jaden Reed and potentially move off Flowers and Addison to get a small plus on top because I don't think that Jaden Reed's upside is much different than the rest of them. I think that his upside could potentially even be higher because I think he's going to end up being the wide receiver one in this Green Bay offense. Obviously, I understand that Christian Watson is still there, but I think Jaden Reed has proven that he is a good option. Now, with that being said, there are plenty of times where he was lined up in the slot this past year. So that also could become an issue if all of the wide receivers are healthy because obviously you have Wicks, you have Watson, you have Dobbs also there. So I'd be interested to see, with the new two rookie tight ends that they drafted and four of those wide receivers, how that ends up shaking out. Like, does Reed play on the outside a lot more than the slot? Does he still play in the slot and the outside? I don't know. But that's obviously one concern I have, but that's also why he's being taken in the 6th round. But I also don't think that the concerns of, like Flowers' upside or Addison's upside really outweigh the risks that Jaden Reed also has. So I'd much rather have Jaden Reed in a plus on top. And then to kind of move on to Deebo Samuel, he's not super old. He's 28, correct? Or he's going to turn 28 this
Yeah, he's
upcoming
28.
season.
He's
Yeah.
28.
So he's not at that cliff that at 32 that we usually see for wide receivers. He's still got 3-4 more years in the tank, obviously barring any injury, and he's a proven fantasy producer. When he's on the field, he can easily be a wide receiver one in any given week. He gets those manufactured touches. He's capable of being a receiver and a running back. He's in an offense that is just bananas. So, I don't have any issue with getting him at this spot, especially when you have another team behind him. He's just going to be a fantasy producer. I think he's one of those vets that we buy this offseason because I don't think people realize how good he actually still is, because he kind of showed that this past season with the way he produced.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people had concerns about how is he gonna do with CMC or,
Right.
how's he gonna do with Ayuk emerging. Kittle's there, a lot of mouths to feed, but he still produced. He had a lot of touchdowns. Yeah, I mean, he's just Debo Samuel. It seems like a lot of people are getting bored of him. It seems like a lot of people are wanting the new shiny toy. Jaden Reed went before him. I think Debo's a great buy right now. I mean, he went wide receiver
hmm
25 off the board, and his production is going to outmatch that, I think.
hmm
And I think he's just the kind of guy that he's a difference maker on the football field, which means he can be a difference maker for your fantasy team.
For sure. I mean, he was the wide receiver 15 this year, and he was also wide receiver 3 in 2021. So he's got the upside to be an absolute monster. Obviously, in 2022, it was both a down year for him and he was also dealing with some injuries at that time. I don't think that, I think it's also dependent on his touchdown upside, because if he's capable of, getting close to 10 touchdowns, like, all purpose, but it's a matter of will he hit that, because that's the most, like, that's the thing that varies the most in fantasy is touchdowns. So
Yeah,
if he gets those
not six.
touchdowns, then he's gonna have, a fringy wide receiver 1, or, be a top 6 wide receiver potentially, and he's only 28. Like, AJ Brown is 27, DJ Moore is 27. Like, he can produce potentially at those levels for, significantly less at the cost.
Yep.
So I think that he's definitely a good buy to be in the offseason, especially when you see that the 109 is going before him. If I would give up the 108, the 109, anything beyond that for Deebo Samuel, not a problem.
Yeah, good veteran buy right now. I definitely agree.
For sure. All right. Well, now that I've highlighted those 2 wide receivers, I'll let you kind of take on the next 3 if you'd like.
I just don't really know what to say here about the 109. If you go back to our last episode again, you'll see where we mocked it. It just seems a little too high for me. I don't know. It just seems like with the unknown parts of it, I just would prefer to take Hawkinson. If I could trade that pick for Debo, I would do that. There's some people afterwards that I, at least would want to try to get. And I don't know. It just seems like a pick where I'd prefer to trade it for somebody that I know will be able to be a proven producer like Debo or like Hawkinson here. Obviously, Hawkinson, we'll go to the next pick already. Hawkinson is dealing with some injuries, unfortunately, but he's a damn good tight end. He's a damn good target earner, and he's proven that year after year now. He's still only 26, so even if it does take him a little bit to recover from this knee injury, he's not old. Tight ends are historically able to produce for a while, and their age, they marinate very well. And T. Hawkinson's a target hog. I know Perry was really excited to take him, and I was trolling him a little bit, just trying to bait him a little bit for some fun. But I think it's a good pick here, especially if I could trade Kincaid in a fourth for Hawkinson, I would do that.
I
And
agree.
Kincaid to your next. Sorry, do you want to talk about Hawkinson for a minute? I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight something that Hawkinson was the last tight end, or was the next tight end taken since Kyle Pitts, which was 26
Huge
picks
gap.
ago. And I
Huge
don't think
gap.
that there shouldn't be that big of a gap. Like, I think
No, there
Hawkinson
shouldn't.
should have gone way higher than he did.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I think that you could easily have Hawkinson above Pitts in your ranks. Like,
Yep.
there's
I think a
nothing
lot of
wrong
people
with
do.
that. Yeah, exactly. So there's no reason why he should have fallen that far. Like,
Yes,
I
but
would
a
have,
two-round gap is crazy.
especially in 0.75, like, PPR, which Hawkinson's value comes from his sheer volume. Like, he's not like a huge, yardage guy. He gets a lot of it from just the volume that he
Yeah,
gets.
he's never
And
had 1,000 yards, but he's had 90
exactly.
receptions, 86 receptions. He's
Yeah,
had
that's
over
nuts.
120 targets twice, 2 years in a row. Like he's not able to hit 1,000 yards yet, but he is a reception hog, and that's exactly what you
For
want in a
sure.
1.75 tight end premium league. So I like
Right.
it.
And even if you have concerns about Kirk Cousins not being there long term, like, okay, he gets maybe 10, 15 less receptions. He's still TJ Hawkinson. He's still going to demand targets. He gets open. He's capable of catching balls. He's a red zone threat. Like, he's not going to just completely fall off the face of the earth because Kirk Cousins isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
All right. That's all I have to say. You can follow along with Kincaid.
Yeah, so next we have another tight end, Dalton Kincaid, who has a lot of truthers. I like Dalton Kincaid. I took him in some rookie drafts last year. I was very open to the upside. He was my tight end one last year. I'll say that. I'm not ashamed. But I just I have concerns, and it's maybe it's not fair, but his production when you look at it when Dawson Knox was on the field versus when Dawson Knox was off the field is very polar opposite. Pretty much got slashed, and that concerns me. Dawson Knox signed an extension. He's most likely going to be there for another year, I guess, unless they trade him after June 1st, because it looks like they have an out there. But I just wouldn't expect that to happen. And
Hmm.
it concerns me that he wasn't able to really produce when Knox was on the field. Obviously, he's going into his second year, but Kincaid was an old prospect. He was 23 going into his rookie year, and he's 24 now going into his second year. And I just don't really have a lot of faith in this spot for him. Like, I just don't think it's a pick that I would have made just because of the fact that, like I said, when Knox is on the field, his production splits, and with how their offense switched up, it's just I'm not really 100% confident with what the Bills are going to be doing.
No, I
What do you think?
agree. I mean, the thing is that yes, he only had 2 touchdowns, so that definitely doesn't
Yeah,
help him from a fantasy production standpoint. However, he did have 91 targets as a rookie. And I think that's definitely noticeable. Obviously, the whole Knox argument you made the case for, which I think that Knox will still be there, which will impact him. But I think that because it takes time for tight ends to progress, especially the fact that he hit 91 targets in a rookie
very
season
good.
is like nuts. Like, yeah, obviously the production wasn't exactly how you would want it, but I think if I had Kincaid and I drafted him last year, I would not be disappointed in this season. I would be
Oh,
pretty
absolutely.
encouraged to see it.
Yeah.
I definitely agree though that this could have been a little bit high, but I also get it. Like, to me, this is a good value spot for him. Like, the a players going around him, you can make the case that to select him over that. Like, I wouldn't be like, I maybe would take Diggs over him, but like I could see you making the case for having Kincaid over him. So
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not trying to act like it's the worst pick in the world, and I
yeah,
have,
for
like I
sure.
said, I drafted a lot of Kincaid last year, and I'm not just trying to sell him for anything.
Hmm.
He had a solid rookie year, and you put a lot on film. It's just there's just some concerns for me. There's some concerns for me, and
Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that's good to talk about when we have a little bit of
Hmm.
concerns with prospects. And I mean, we can't if we're gonna talk about concerns, look at my fucking next pick. I took Bryce Young. There's
Yeah.
so many concerns there. There's like a plethora list of concerns there, but I took Bryce Young, and it's because of the fact that I couldn't get Sean Watson in the fifth, and so I didn't want to take just Jared Goff in the fourth, and I didn't want to take Justin Fields over Trey McBride, and it's all these things that lead to each other. And I took Justin Jefferson over Burrow, and I took him over Herbert, and now I have to sit with the fact that I have Bryce Young at my super flex position. But I don't want to write Bryce Young off yet. Like, that Panthers offense was dreadful last year. That offensive line was horrible, and I don't think it's fair to write off a number one overall pick after 1 year. Um,
Hmm.
I think I'd like to see what he does for another year with Dave Dave Corrales, I think is his name. I can't remember off the top of my head. That's his name, right?
Believe
Yeah.
so. Yes,
Yeah,
that's how you
I
pronounce it.
literally don't know how I'm blanking on it because I was talking about him for the past week after I made the pick. But Corrales, he was a whisperer in Seattle, helped Gino revive his career, helped Baker revive his career in Tampa this year. He could do that with Bryce Young. I think he'll help him at least put some weapons around him and help him develop. And I'm excited to see what that looks like
Hmm.
because I think round six for just last year, somebody who was going round two, round three, I think he can skyrocket right back up to that value. Seems kind of
Hmm.
eerily similar to like Tua, maybe like Tua really dipped after his rookie year. He was going pretty cheap, and then I
Hmm.
mean not after his rookie year, but he like skyrocketed back up after he got Tyreek Hill and after they put some weapons around him, and that he really like put more on tape and that he really proved himself. So I think that
For
could
sure.
happen with Bryce Young. Not saying it will, but I think in round six, it's an upside bet that I'm willing to make compared to the skill players that went after him, especially since I didn't
For
have a
sure.
quarterback too.
No, I agree. And his name is Dave Canales, not
Canales, that's
Corrales.
what it is.
Yes,
Corrals,
that's what it is. It
Canales.
was
I was
like one
talking
of
about
those
him all
things where
week
I
too.
couldn't remember it, but it sounded
Yeah, it was
right.
like a
Yeah. So,
Freudian slip. Like I don't even know how to explain it. Like I
yeah.
was talking about him all week, and
Hmm.
he's been on
Just
my mind
complete
because I
that R
want.
just a little bit, make it an
Yeah, I
N.
just gotta finish
There you
it.
go.
Yeah, damn. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what he's able to do with this
Mhm.
Panthers offense.
Yeah, and at this point, this is the range where you have guys that like most of these guys have some form of question mark, and these are
Absolutely,
guys that are like upside swings. Like, you want to see them go 2 rounds higher next year. Like, that's the goal with this.
absolutely.
So with that being said, I don't really see Diggs potential. Like, he could go around higher, but because of his age, I think that this is just more of a production pick. Like, Diggs is a
Absolutely.
perfect buy this offseason. Like, if you can get him for a late first, I would easily do that if you're competitive, because I don't see why he wouldn't be a wide receiver one. Like, he did fantastic in the first half of the season, and then the second half was dreadful. But there was also, the whole Bills offense was significantly worse that second half. So I'm not ready to write him off. Like, he has so much production, history. He had the first half of the season, was amazing. Yeah, like, he was so good those games, and he was exactly what you thought you were getting when you drafted Diggs. It was just the second half was just it was dog shit compared to what
Yeah,
you thought it was. Like, he was producing at like wide receiver 2 and 3 numbers. It sucks. He was getting the targets, but they just weren't good. So, like, and people, have a lot of recency bias, and they've kind of moved him down. But this is a fine spot for Diggs. I don't really have an issue with it.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
I'm wanting to buy Diggs, and he's going around 2 a redraft, so if you
yeah,
are able to get him for cheap, I mean, the upside's there. He's able to
for
hit
sure.
very high points per game production for you, and he's just
Hmm.
gonna keep getting cheaper as the years go, because that's how it works in Dynasty. You get older, you get cheaper, but he's someone that I'm wanting to buy. We'll get to that in the trade section in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And even if he goes to a different team, like he ends up in a different spot when the season comes around, I don't really care. He's still Stephon Diggs. Like he went
Yeah.
to a new team and did just fine. So I'm pretty sure if he saw a new change of scenery, he's gonna do that somewhere else. All right, so moving on, the next two picks, we had James Cook and George Pickens, and I obviously it was George Pickens at the 6'10, but James Cook is kind of a weird one here because he had a pretty decent season, and there's no real indication that he's not going to be in the same role next year. So I think this is a fine spot for him. But I'm also looking to sell James Cook if I can get, that 107, 108 pick potentially, or maybe move off to like a wide receiver in this range, just because wide receivers typically have more insulation. But J- I don't think there's much that separates James Cook and Rashad White. And I would much rather prefer James Cook. So if you can have Rashad White and then trade down to James Cook and get something on top, I would do that 100%. So that's all I have to really say about that. Unless you had something to say, I'll move on to my next pick.
The only thing I would really add is that I think James Cook's a
Hmm.
lot better as a rusher compared to Rashad White, so I have a lot more confidence there.
Hmm.
He hit over 1,100 rushing yards this year, and I'm someone that was really not interested in James Cook. I'll admit it, but he put a lot on display last year that showed his upside, and I think I'm okay with this cost. He's not someone
Hmm.
that I have really many shares of, so I don't really know if I'd be looking to sell him or anything, but I don't really have an issue with this cost at all.
Hmm. Yeah, and the one spot that I have, I'm not looking to sell him because he's my only running back on that
Mhm.
roster outside of Mostert. So like he's the only one I can be confident for next season. But
That makes
if
sense.
I had him in multiple spots and he was not my running back one, I would look to see if I could potentially tear down or get a plus on top of someone that I think could also be
Yeah,
productive next year.
that makes
And then the
sense.
next one, I have wide receiver university going. Um, I've already picked Puka. I've picked Tank Dell, and I picked Drake London. I'm going for the zero RB strat here, as you can already tell. But at my wide receiver four, I got a guy who I'm not hugely convicted is going to be amazing, but I like George Pickens here. I think this is a fine spot, to be that, first flex wide receiver four on my team. He definitely showcased his ability. He's, a highlight reel waiting to happen. And I know we all like to shit on Arthur Smith, blah, 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 blah. But like, he was in an offense that did see AJ Brown, dominate, Derrick Henry dominate. Like, I do think there is a possibility that it can't be much worse than Matt Canada was. Like, Matt Canada's offense was
Horrible,
dreadful. The,
horrible.
if you look, like, I can't, like, George Pickens, if you can go on Twitter right now and find his route trees, and like him and Deontay Johnson, they were like never going across the middle of the field, it seemed. Like, it was very seldom that they were. So, if they expand their route tree and are able to get into more open spots, and obviously, they have a quarterback that can throw them the ball in those spots, I have no problem seeing both Deontay Johnson and Pickens, jumping up this year. I think that they might, obviously Arthur Smith likes to be a more run heavy offense, but I think the offense overall is just going to be better than it was because they were awful this year. Like, yes, they did make the playoffs. Don't get me wrong. They did have, stretches where Mason Rudolph did do something, that wasn't absolutely like, piss poor, but I don't see how their offense could be much worse than it already was. And I think that him producing at, just in that wide receiver two range with wide receiver 1 weeks sprinkled in, I am fine with that as my wide receiver four. I know your thoughts on Pickens are a little different than mine, but I like to, introduce this more into my team at this point.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm not crapping on Pickens as a talent. I think he's a really good player, but fantasy football wise, the inconsistencies there scare me. I know I texted you about this. He had 4 wide receiver 1 weeks and 1 wide receiver 2 week, and then he had 11 outside the top 36, and the lows were just real low. But, that's variance. He's still a big play threat, and he's still able, he had 1,100 yards. He's a really good player, and I'm not knocking that. It's just here, I think I probably would have preferred Saquon, Kenneth Walker, but that's just like a small knock. Like that's really not much. Like Pickens, I believe in as a talent, and I think I'm excited to see what he's able to do in this Arthur Smith offense. And I'm not rushing to sell my George Pickens shares at all. Um, I just would like to see a little bit more consistency fantasy wise. But as you said in our text messages, it is a 3 wide receiver, 3 flex league, so you can kind of live with the variance there. So I get it.
Hmm. I'm actually just looking it up right now because a lot of his best weeks came towards the end of the season. And okay, so Matt Canada got fired on November 21st, which was week 11. And his stat lines following that were he had th- 3 receptions, 58 yards, no touchdowns, 4 receptions, 86 yards, 5 receptions, only 19 yards, 3 receptions, 47 yards. His 4 receptions and 195 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then 7 receptions and 131 yards. And then obviously that's not accounting for his, playoff game, but I think that there's stuff to be encouraged here. I think he's a wide receiver two, back end wide receiver two with wide receiver one upside. And as my first flex and my wide receiver four, I'd want a guy that could potentially win me weeks. Obviously, if he was your 2 or 3, I'd be a little more concerned. But with the way my team is structured, this is like, to me, the perfect pick.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
And
he's
he's
also
only
got some
22.
value insulation because, yeah, of his age as well. Because if Deontay Johnson ends up leaving, he'll be the number one wide receiver. And obviously, people that like George Pickens freaking love him. So like, he's got like a hive of people that like him. So that just has enough value as it is.
I'm sorry. I just realized that George Pickens is younger than me, and I feel old.
Oh, dude,
He was
I'm almost 25. So like seeing that most of these players that we're talking about are younger than me, just I don't
he
even
was
want
born a
to.
week after me.
I don't even want to mention it, man.
I feel so old now. He's born a week after me. This is crazy. What have I done with
I
my
know it's
life? This guy
nuts.
has 1,100 yards in the NFL, and I'm fucking sitting here talking about football.
Hey, it takes
But yeah,
it takes
he
all
still is
sorts
only
to make the
22.
world go around.
True, true. I'm doing my part.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let you hammer home the last 2 picks, and that'll wrap up our
Yeah, we
little startup.
got 2 more, and here we got Kenneth Walker. It's Kenneth Walker. I mean, he's a proven good rusher, and he's got a lot of touchdown upside, but that receiving profile is just not there. So I get why he fell, but at the same time, back to back pretty solid years. I like the pick here. I think he has the upside to shoot up to round 5, round 4 next year, like if he has a good year, and it makes sense to me to take him here. I definitely prefer him over Pacheco, but maybe I'm a little crazy for that. I don't know. Pacheco had a really good year, but I have more
Hmm.
confidence as Walker as a player overall.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think that these two right here are valued appropriately, both next to each other and where they were
Yeah.
drafted, because they both have roles next year for sure, and they're both able to produce. Obviously, Kenneth Walker is going to be in a different offense, but I don't really see that being that much of an issue because his receiving upside we know is not super high, but his ability to run the ball is very good. And he's
Yeah.
not really got much competition, and I doubt that now that Pete Carroll's no longer there, that they're going to add somebody else that's going to take away touches
Well,
because Zach Sharp.
Charbonnet is there. He's pretty
Yeah, but
good.
like that, I was just about to make that point. Like Charbonnet really didn't seem to cut into his workload from the previous year.
Yeah.
It just kind of took away, that whole DJ Dallas, carousel behind, like the 2 and 3s behind what he was. So,
He did command targets though, so he does have that like receiving
mhm.
upside. So I do like Charbonnet, but I
Yeah.
think Walker clearly is the one there, and
But yeah,
Walker
but
is going
Walker
to be that
doesn't
rushing target.
Walker yeah, Walker was never given the receptions in the
Yeah.
first place. So I don't think that
Exactly.
that really
Exactly.
knocks him. Yeah.
Yeah. So it doesn't take anything away from him. It's more or less the
Hmm.
fact that I like both of them at their own costs, kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
For sure. So if you guys have any comments about how we valued players, any comments about how we valued certain players, if you disagree or agree with us, or you want to make more additional comments in the picks, leave a comment down below. If you're listening, obviously I know you can't do that, but any sort of discourse is always great because it's nice to know how other people are feeling, because we could sit here and talk about how it is and you can think we're completely wrong, and that's totally fine. That's why this game is fun. That's why we make trades and whatnot. So
Exactly. So
wrap. Yep.
chime in, and let us know what you think the worst pick was. Talk some shit.
Yes. Yes,
Get
for
that shit
sure.
going. And then,
Also,
it takes all kinds of thoughts to make the dynasty market go round. So that's, we're not going to agree on everything. And then, in my opinion, that's always what I love most about this game is that we're not going to see eye to eye and everything. And if we did see eye to eye, it wouldn't be fun because we would not be able to make anything happen. We wouldn't be able to trade at all.
mhm.
We wouldn't be able to get any deals done. Startups wouldn't be fun. So talk some shit and then, let us know what the worst pick was. Maybe even let us know what the best pick was.
For sure. And I'm glad that Brian O'Leary's not in here because you can never make a trade with that man. That man is too damn
Oh,
sharp.
he would have sniped me every single pick, man. Every
No,
single
I
pick would
know.
have been a snipe.
All right. Well, we appreciate y'all tuning in. We're gonna, take a little break here and then we're gonna kind of discuss some more dynasty trades. So catch you soon.
All right, welcome back. We just took our little break, and we're going to analyze some trades that have been going on in our leagues, whether it was by us or, as you can tell, by some people that aren't us. And the first one that we're going to start off with is made by Taylor Gang and by Perry. So shout out to both of those guys for being in leagues with us. We really appreciate it, especially Taylor Gang because he's took over an orphan and a league that was pretty crappy. That was just abandoned. Not the league, but the team was abandoned by someone. And so with this first one, we're just going to take a look at 25 first, 310. In return, got Geno Smith and the 111. That's what Perry received. Makes sense for Perry. He's trying to make that contender jump and getting the 111. He's able to add some capital here. But I think the thing to really focus on in this one is that Taylor Gang. He is getting his own first back. Like I mentioned, it is an orphan that he's trying to take over and trying to make some moves on. So it makes sense to try to get your own first back so that way you actually have full control over your future. And I know better than anyone that sometimes you have to overpay if you're going to be getting your first back because people will know that it's your first and that if they hold on to it, most likely it'll be a good pick. So, it makes sense here. And I understand why Taylor Gang made it and I understand why Perry made it. Do you really have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can possibly say was the addition of Geno Smith. Like, I think if it was the 111 for that pick in the 310, or maybe somebody else other than Geno Smith, because giving up a starting quarterback in Superflex is, I don't think that he got enough value out of it. I definitely understand the rationale behind the pick, but I could think that he maybe could have added somebody else and then sell Geno for something different. I think he didn't maximize the potential value he could have gotten for Geno Smith, but I don't think it's, a horrible trade. I think it's definitely a logical one to make. It was just, I think that there could have been more value extracted on a rebuilding squad. Obviously, like you had mentioned, the team he got wasn't all that great, and he was trying to, be desperate to get all those picks. So I definitely understand the motive behind it.
Yeah, and I just want to kind of further analyze it. I would take a random 25 first over the 111 just because of the fact that it's the unknown. I know some folks don't
Hmm.
really agree with that, but I also know like Brian O'Leary feels that way too. Like, I would rather take the upside shot a year from now with it could be the 101 for all we
Hmm.
know. You know what I mean? Versus
Right.
like that guaranteed 111. But I do agree with the Geno part. Maybe he could have fished a little more value out of it, but at the same time he's taking over an orphan, and when you take over an orphan team, you really just gotta make trades as fast as you can. Not as fast as
Yeah.
you can, but you really gotta make trades so that way you can start building your vision for your team. And I
Hmm.
totally see the vision that he's getting here.
Yeah, and now that I think about it, like if he's getting his own first back and he's trying to get rid of a lot of his contending pieces, then clearly that first is just going to keep going up in value because his team
Yeah.
is just not going to compete as much. So that definitely makes it a little better.
Yeah, a year from now, it'll look better than it does today. That's just
Yeah.
kinda how it works when you are trying to
Hmm.
rebuild and you get your first back. It's, a year from now, that could be the 101, and that's
Hmm.
great value for it if that's the case.
For sure. All right, and then I'll let you kind of highlight the Jaden Reed Addison one that we kind of touched up upon when we
I know
did
you're
our
quite
startup
excited about
analysis.
this one. I know you're quite
Hmm.
excited. We have Jaden Reed and the 212, and in return, Oit Boy got Jordan Addison and 25 fourth. I should mention that X Becerra is the guy who got Jaden Reed. I hope that's how I pronounce your name, dude. You're in so many of my leagues, and I don't even know how to properly pronounce your name, but that's my best guess. Seems right. And I really like the Jaden Reed side here. They went what 2 picks apart, 1 pick apart. I can't remember. It was like 2 picks maybe in our startup, so able to flip a 4th for a late 2. Love that. Great
Hmm.
value.
I agree. And then just a small side note, if you guys are in any of these trades or we we'll reach out to you just to potentially like put your handle in the descriptions so we can kind of shout you out just so if people want to go and follow you guys if you're okay with that, of course,
Yeah, we
we'll be
wanna,
willing
we
to do
wanna
that
give you
for you.
recognition for being
Yeah.
part of our leagues and for being okay with us
Hmm.
doing this. At least,
Yes,
we really
for
appreciate
sure.
it because it helps give us things to analyze.
Of course. All right, and then I'll kind of touch up on this next one because this is a league that I'm in. So this is a 10-man league right here, and it's a little bit smaller than the rosters that we're usually we do. It's QB super flex, but then there's only 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, and only 2 flex spots. So there's a lot less starters. So there's less emphasis on depth and more so to getting those top guys. So we see here that Sam Laporta was traded straight up for Chris Olave. Now, at face value, I definitely think that the person who traded Laporta could have gotten a little bit more on top, but seeing as the guy who got Olave has one of the best teams in the league, he also has McBride and Joku and Kittle. So it made sense to move off of one of them. And his wide receivers are good, but they weren't. They were probably his weakest spot on his team, and he didn't have a lot of depth. So getting Olave, who's well value insulated, could easily, well, not easily, but he could take a jump, to reaching career highs in points per game. I definitely understand it, even though in our recent startup, Sam Laporta went at the start of the first and Olave went at the back end. I definitely think that the guy who got Olave could have potentially maybe gotten like a second on top of it or another player. I don't know what your thoughts are on the matter.
Yeah, I would prefer Laporta because, like you mentioned, he went start of the
Hmm.
third. Olave went end of the third, so the value is there. But also, it's tied in premium league, so I just would rather have the upside shot on a guy who can really be a difference-making tight end. Um, Not as rare as it was a couple years ago, but it's still something that's very important to have on your dynasty roster, in my opinion. But I do
Hmm.
understand, like you said, why UV, I think that's his name, made that
Yep.
trade. I get it because he already had great tight ends. Like he's got a hell of a tight end room, so I can understand why he wants to get a wide receiver like that. But maybe he
Hmm.
could have got a little more out of it.
For sure. And shout out to UV. I know I follow you on Twitter. You've been a great person to converse with in our DMs, even though they've kind of dried up over the past couple of years. But yeah, we would go back and forth all the time. We make trades and just talk about stuff. He's a great league member. He's always
Always good
active.
to have
He's
that.
fantastic. Yeah, for sure. And I'll let you kind of roast me on this next one or confirm
No,
why I
no
made
roasting required. I mean, like I'm
it.
trying to sell Zay Flowers. It's something that people. It's something I've done, and it's something I mentioned on the podcast earlier today. I'm open to selling. I'm trying to trade back, but when you can get a fifth round startup pick for, let's say, seventh or eighth or even ninth round startup pick, like most likely ninth, in the 112, I am. I'd say eighth probably. Sorry. But I'm taking that upside gap when the only difference is Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson is a zero to
Hmm.
me. Literally does nothing for me. I don't know. I know some folks really like Michael Wilson, but he doesn't do anything for me really. And
Hmm.
I would absolutely trade the 112 for Zay Flowers. So Zay Flowers plus what I view as a zero for
Hmm.
that. I'll do that.
Yeah, and just to give some context in this league, my team performed pretty poorly, and I don't have a lot of youth in it. Like there's some youth, but I have the 103, and I also have the 112 here. So I'm trying to really. I also have I have my own and an additional 2025 first, but I'm trying to really restructure my squad and to also pair Zay Flowers with Lamar Jackson on this team is good because I think that getting that depth also helps me be able to move off of some of my other assets and still have some production so that the rebuild can, be a little bit quicker. And also I don't have to worry about completely sacrificing production. So there's like, if, guys end up taking leaps that I didn't expect that I have, like, it could end up working out pretty well. So I'm doing my best to restructure the roster, and obviously Michael Wilson's not that important to me, and giving up that 112 for a guy who I'm pretty confident could be a 14 between 14 and 16 point per game player going forward is pretty solid.
Yeah, he had a solid rookie year, and plus you get that fun stack with Lamar.
For sure. All right, so moving on, we have trades that I specifically made this offseason thus far, and then next we'll kind of go over all of Boyd's trades, or some of them at least, because we'll get to that. So as we can see on the top, this is kind of also highlighting my buying of Nico Collins, like how I had mentioned before, how there may not be that many buyers for him, and also our logic behind selling Addison. Now, as you can see, humble brag, the 112, I won this league this year. I got rid of the 112, which was my only first round pick, and Addison, and then obviously the 211, the 211, which I'm not gonna not highlight for Nico Collins, who I think is the best asset within the deal itself. He's in the top 3 rounds of a startup. He's in my top 12 dynasty wide receivers, and then obviously we've highlighted George Pickens. I got both of those in return, so I think that the way I see it is Pickens is about equal to the 112 and the 211. I'd say maybe it gives a slight uptick to the picks depending on how you swing with Pickens. But Nico Collins is way higher than Addison, which is like why I made the trade. obviously, giving up 3 assets to get 2 is not the best thing, but on a team that only has 2 flex spots and 2 wide receivers, it made sense to do because Nico Collins is my 3rd wide receiver and Pickens is my 5th. Excuse me, there's 3 flexes and only 2 wide receivers in this league. So I have, Pickens as my 5th wide receiver and Collins as my, 3rd or 4th, depending on how you value him compared to Diggs. Because I also have Amon-Ra and Brandon Ayuk. So I think that this just kind of solidified my wide receiver room in this league without really me giving up a whole lot. Like I think I tiered up pretty well.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it's actually a pretty fair trade overall.
Hmm.
Um, like you get the high end asset in Nico Collins, which if you're able to get the top tier asset, I always prefer that. But like I said, I do have some issues with George Pickens, like fantasy wise. But as I've already said as well, I'm trying to sell Addison, so I think this was a good way to get off
Hmm.
him.
Yeah, and having that guy that could potentially win me a week as my last flex spot wide receiver 5, I'm happy with that any day of the week. Also having Lamar on this team, Jameer Gibbs, Derrick Henry is also pretty nice to have.
Absolutely, and
So
like Addison had like 10 touchdowns
yeah,
last year, so like let's say George Pickens is able to go from 5 to even 7 or even 8, like,
right.
that helps eliminate a few weeks of the variance that I have an issue with, so
Hmm.
I just prefer your side, I like it, but I
Yeah.
think it's a very fair deal overall, and I can see,
Hmm.
why that person wanted to get the picks and wanted to get Addison because Addison is very popular right now after that
Hmm.
good rookie year.
Yeah, for sure. Now, this next pick I made was a little bit of like a challenge trade. It was more of a spicier one where I may have given up more value than I should have, but I needed DJ Moore. I have no DJ Moore anywhere outside of this one league. And so, for those of you that are listening and not watching, I gave up Devonta Smith, excuse me, the 109 and Dawson Knox, and then I got DJ Moore, Ty Chandler is just kind of a throw in, and then the 112. So I moved back 3 spots and essentially just swapped DJ Moore and Devonta Smith. Now, my rationale behind this is that yes, DJ Moore's value is not as high as I think it should be because, like I had mentioned before, I think he's going to be at the back end of the first, and he's only 27. So he's potentially getting Caleb Williams. He did this insane season with Justin Fields, who is not the best passer in the world, and he could be getting an even better passer. Now, obviously, we run into the issue where maybe they get another wide receiver because they have multiple first round picks. We don't know. But I do think that DJ Moore has always been a great wide receiver and just needed a little bit more touchdown luck and a little bit more volume, which he got. And I don't really see much separating him, from not being a wide receiver 1 for the next 2 seasons. So getting that, giving up Devonta Smith, who's kind of that mid wide receiver 2 range for a guy who I think could be a wide receiver 1 for the next 2 years. I think that was a pretty good spot because this team is kind of in that limbo where it's fairly competitive, but it's still a couple pieces away because it's not super deep and it is a deeper league. So it'll all depend on who ends up being the 109 and 112 and where my team ends up being. But I definitely would love to have another share of DJ Moore. I don't know if you think that I gave up a little bit too much or you disagree with the value I gave or
Like maybe like you gave up a little too much, but for me, like to some people it might give up too much, but to me, I think DJ Moore has a higher ceiling and also has a better floor than Devontae Smith, so I like that swap. And 112 to 109, the 109 is a little bit higher of a tier, but the 112 I think is still a good pick. Like we could still end up with, as we went over in our mock draft last year, or last week, you can end up with a really nice prospect there. And so I honestly like your side of the deal. Ty Chandler
Mhm.
put up some pretty good games last year, and some people were buying him for like a 2. So anytime you have a contingent RB with upside who can spike in value, I would prefer that
Mhm.
over a guy like Knox who really is just kind of living in middle of
Yeah,
land, like with nothing, like purgatory.
right.
I do
Mhm.
like your side of the deal. DJ Moore to the moon.
Yep. And just to highlight, I have Kincaid and Joku on that team, so
Okay.
it was fine to get rid of it. It's tight end premium. And the reason why I wanted Ty Chandler is because he could end up just being a backup again. But if they don't sign anybody, he could easily be the RB1 at least for a few weeks until
Yeah.
they potentially could sign someone else. So it's kind of one of those ones where it was just a dart throw, whatever. Um, and then also I know that there's going to be some wonky stuff with running backs that comes. So I kind of wanted to move back a little bit to potentially get it because that's this one thing that his team needs. Because I have Brees Hall and then nobody else. like nobody even remotely close to being usable. Like I was rocking with Jaleel McLaughlin last year as my RB2 the whole year. Like it wasn't very fun. So yeah, there's that. So that was kind of the reason why I moved back, because my wide receivers and tight ends in this league are pretty decent, at least in the higher end. All right. So moving along, we have these two trades with that. If we'll go back to this other slide just to kind of highlight it again, this Taylor Gang fellow that just took over this orphan is trying to acquire as many picks as he can and kind of get to this rebuild. So I know I didn't place it on the bottom left, but on the bottom right, we can see here that I basically gave his 2025 second that I had to just get Calvin Ridley. Now, obviously, some people are very much off on Ridley. They've kind of written him off, but he didn't put up that horrible of a season considering he had been gone away from football for so long. And I think acquiring him for not even a second this year is a pretty good buy. Like this kind of shows that you should buy Calvin Ridley if you can get him for this price. Because if you're a competitive roster, like he's like a perfect, wide receiver 3, 4, 5, whatever, which he's my like wide receiver, like 3 or 4 on this team. So I'd gladly take that on a, competitive roster, or that roster that's in like, that little limbo stage. If you have extra seconds, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I had a whole thread where I was talking about why I think Calvin Ridley's a buy. Some people just did not like that, and I was
No,
getting a
they
lot
did
of
not.
crap for it. But some folks did. Here, I totally get what Taylor Gang's doing. He's getting his second again back, and he's getting rid of a guy like Ridley who is not young. He's not getting any younger, and his production wasn't great last year. I mean, it was good, but it wasn't great. And so if that pick ends up being like 201, 202, 203, absolutely. I mean, like that's good
Hmm.
value, especially since he's shedding those points. But your team's contending. I think this was actually a fair deal, like a win-win deal. Like he's getting what he wants, you're getting what you want. You're
Hmm.
achieving world peace really with this trade. I mean, you guys are knocking it out of the
Yeah.
park.
For sure. And I also had 3 seconds for in 2025. So it was a no brainer for me to make the trade. Even if I don't think, like, if my team ends up not being super competitive, I can just offload him for another second or something
Yeah, like
comparable.
he could
So,
rise in value. He could
yeah,
maybe hit
exactly.
like late first value again, like he did this
Right.
season. Like that could totally happen. Maybe a 2 and a 3. But
Hmm.
again, I totally see what Taylor Gang's doing, and like the fact that he's shedding those points and that he is getting his picks back is huge for a
Hmm.
team that's taking over an orphan.
Yeah, for sure. And then just to kind of highlight in this next pick, or excuse me, this next trade that I also had made with Taylor Gang, um, this was kind of a deal that it's depending on how you value the Pittsburgh wide receivers and Komet, which 3/4 of the deal. So yeah, no duh. But it's kind of one of those things where we're in that weird situation where we're not really dealing high end assets. We're kind of dealing with upside swings and guys that are either older or we don't really know. So it is tight end premium. Cole Kmet was my second tight end, so I was more willing to get rid of him. And George Pickens, obviously, I've bought him. Well, I've selected him and I bought him in another spot. But getting rid of him here made a little bit more sense because, as I've highlighted, I prefer Jaden Reed in that range because I've been willing to tier down. Well, trade back in the same tier with like Addison Flowers and get something potentially on top. And then I'm also getting the guy who's ahead of Pickens on the depth chart in Deontay Johnson. Now, obviously, Deontay didn't have that fantastic of a year, but I think that if we think the Pittsburgh offense is going to get at least a little bit improved, uh, I don't see why Deontay Johnson, who's had high target shares the last few seasons, isn't going to be at least somewhat usable. Like he's my wide receiver. Like I just acquired my wide receivers like 3 and 4, 4 and 5. I don't recall. So like I'd much rather have that than a tight end, a fringy tight end one who I don't know is going to repeat what he did this year, and then obviously George Pickens, who I value lower than the 2 wide receivers I had acquired.
Yeah, yeah. I honestly think again, this is a very fair trade. If you're looking at our startup, that is 6th round pick Jaden Reed, 6th round pick George Pickens, 10th round pick Cole Kmet, 9th round pick Deontay Johnson. So this seems like
Hmm.
right on the money value wise. And Kmet's really kind of an underrated performer. He's been a top, 12. And he's been top 8 finish the past couple of years. But points per game, he's been a tight end one. He is, and he's getting Caleb Williams. So like it seems like he's pretty underrated. I obviously really like Deontay Johnson. That's he's someone that I like guys who earn targets, and he is a target earner. But
Hmm.
again, this value just seems like right on the nail for me, and I can totally see why both sides wanted to get this one done.
Yeah, and he's also getting a little younger because Deontay Johnson, could end
Yep.
up not being anything great, and it's also he's at that he's at that age where he's not really going to gain much value. But to be
Yeah.
fair, him going in the ninth round, he could end up jumping to maybe the eighth or seventh round
Yeah.
in like next year. But even still, it's at that point where he's a less desirable pick for some people to, or excuse me, he's a less desirable player for people to want to acquire. So I
Yeah. So a
kind of
team
just
that's
took the
building
veteran
for
discount.
yeah. So a team like it's building for the future, getting a 22-year-old receiver who just had 1,100 yards. It's a good way to build for the future.
For
I
sure.
totally get both
And
sides.
yeah. So moving along, we can, you can take it away and kind of go over the trades that you've made this
Oh my
offseason.
God, it's my time to shine. Holy cow, I'm
I
nervous. All
know
right,
we've been active
so
recently,
yeah, I've made, let me count real quick. I have made one, two, three, four, five trades in the past 2 days. So from yesterday and today, I've made five trades.
but
Um,
quick question. I'm not going to steal your thunder, but how many are involving a guy in these slides? Yeah, exactly. There's your answer.
yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that.
All right. Well, yeah, well,
First
I'll let
off,
you.
we'll just go with the one that's in the top left, and then we'll just kind of go as you would reading a paragraph. Saquon Barkley is who I ended up receiving. Taylor Gang ended up receiving 204 and 209. And I'm somebody who's trying to make that jump towards contending. My team isn't missing one piece, but it's shaping up to contend. I've been rebuilding and I'm trying to get points in my lineup. So this was a price that I was willing to pay. I really believe in Saquon. I think he's an incredible athlete. He's obviously an incredible running back. I mean, he's had 16 plus point per game in 4 of his 5 seasons where he didn't have a torn ACL. So the production's there, but he's a running back. He's not getting any younger. He has question marks about where he'll end up. We don't know how he'll be used. There's a lot of things going on. So, like, I get wanting to flip off him as a rebuilder. Maybe he could have gotten more value. Like, maybe he could have got a third. I don't really know, but I think this was a fair price for me to pay, and I can totally understand why he would want to make this deal because he, again, as we've established, all these trades with Taylor Gang have been in the same league where he took over the orphan. So he's trying to make moves where he's setting himself up for not this year, but for the future, and he's trying to shed points so that way his picks that he's getting back, like the 25 first and the 25 second, are going to be 101, 102, 103. That's what he's going for. That's the goal. And I think this is just another step towards completing that goal. And I think both of us are getting what we want in the situation. I'm buying the dip on Saquon Barkley, and he is helping his team shed points. So that way he's got good picks next year.
For sure. I definitely think he could have gotten more value. But just to kind of highlight, he has the 106 this year, and then now he has the 204, 211, and the 209. So he could potentially take some flyers on, those rookie running backs or like mid tier wide receivers. And if they hit, they hit. And it's good for him for, long term standpoint. And also because, even if they do hit, they're probably not going to produce at the level Saquon is. So it won't really impact his future picks either.
Yeah, so he could do like what I was doing last year in a lot of my late picks, like with late seconds. I was targeting Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed's now going
Hmm.
round 6 of startup. So if he ends up with a guy like that who's able to boost his value, Jaden Reed went before Saquon in our startup. So like
Hmm.
if he's able to get that, that's a win a year from now. And that's the game that he's playing. He's playing for a year from now, not today.
Hmm.
And like I totally get the vision that he's going for with because
Hmm.
anytime I take over an orphan, I have to do whatever I can to get deals done so that way I am building something rather than because like when you inherit an orphan, it's a mess, it's muddy, the person didn't care enough to make moves, the person didn't care, so their value's stagnant. So you really got to liven
Hmm.
up the league and make deals.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely
All right,
agree with that.
so next we will go to Noah Fant trade. In this one, I acquired Noah Fant, which is something that if you're in a league with me, you've probably seen me do recently. I have 4 trades in the past 2 days where I've acquired Noah Fant, and I've drafted Noah Fant in both of my startups this season. Well, since the new year started. So I'm all aboard the Noah Fant train. And this one I gave up the 307, which was a pretty good price to pay. There's another trade where I gave up the 303, and there was 2 trades where I gave up Kate Otten for him straight up. That's what the other 3 trades were, so that's 4 total. I really like Noah Fant, and I feel like I should kind of explain why a little bit. He was really productive in college. He was a really good athlete. He had a really good 40 time with 4.5, and he was an early declare with a round 1 pick. Like that's a good profile right there. Like that's a strong prospect profile. Obviously, he's not a prospect anymore. He's been in the league for a while. So what has he done since he's been in the league? Well, he's a proven target earner. He's had 2 seasons of 90 plus targets, and he's had 4 seasons of 60 plus. So he is able to get targets, even if it's an offense with a lot of mouths to feed. He's able to get those targets in. And he also has that free agency upside. So like we don't know where he could end up. I don't think he'll go back to Seattle. I think he's gonna want to go somewhere where he can be utilized. And he's not old. He's only 27, 26, somewhere around there. So he's not over the age cliff yet, and he still could hit meaningful production. I mean, look at what Evan Ingram has done in the past couple of years. Like if Noah Fant goes to the right situation, like how Evan Ingram went to Jacksonville in the right situation, Noah Fant could really explode. And these late thirds and mid thirds are a price that I'm willing to pay. And a guy like Kate Otten is also a price I'm willing to pay because while the production's there on Kate Otten's side, I just have more faith in the upside for Noah Fant. Obviously, it could bite me in the ass, but this is a situation where I'm just trying to get somebody that I think really has upside that doesn't match the cost.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I definitely agree. You also sent him the 308 to me to also acquire him in one league, and I
Fuck,
instantly declined
dang
it
it.
because I'm also still a Noah Fant believer. I obviously don't have the same conviction that Boyd does, where I'm going to get him everywhere, but I do have him in a few spots, and I'm just going to hold on to him and just kind of see where it goes because he's not my top tight end on those teams. And if I get another productive tight ends in these premium leagues, then that'd be fantastic. And if not, it's not like I really had invested that much into him. Same thing with Boyd. So like, it is what it is. And if this is a dart throw that you want to make, this is definitely one of them to make. So if you guys can acquire Noah Fant for a back end third or an early fourth, I would 100% implore you to explore those in any league that you're in, even if it's not
Yeah,
tight end premium.
yeah,
But tight end premium, it's an absolute must to do because you want to get a guy that could potentially vault in that top 12, no problem, which he
yeah,
has
and
done once.
true, true. And he led his team in reception once as well, so it's not like
Hmm.
he's not able to do it. And you live and die by the sword, you might get stabbed, but I'm willing to get stabbed here in this
Right.
situation. I'm in over 30 leagues, so trading for him in 4 of them really like overall doesn't really do a ton like weight wise,
Hmm.
but I'm really like I'm excited to make these additions to my team so because I think it's an upside stab that I'd like to make. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, I couldn't trade for him in more leagues because Brian O'Leary has him in every one of them. Ah, I digress. I digress. But yeah,
so
so that's how I feel about Noah Fant.
yeah, I'm gonna make that point. If Brian O'Leary has somebody invested in a lot of spots, you definitely want to go out and acquire him because that is the smartest man I know in Dynasty. And
He knows
if I can
ball.
replicate some, at least half of the things that I do, then I'll be chilling. So
He
I
knows
love him
ball.
having him in some leagues, but it's also nice to not have him in leagues because it's just you can never get anything by him. It's
He knows
so
ball.
funny.
Absolutely. All right. So for this next one, another one of my trades. In this one, I traded Roshan Johnson and Jordan Addison, who's someone I said that I'm trying to sell. In return, I got Stephon Diggs, Josh Jacobs, and a 2025 third as a flyer. And I'm pretty like content with this one. The big gap for me here was trading Roshan to Jacobs. To me, that's a huge tier jump. I don't really have much faith in Roshan. Like being the starter next year or having meaningful production. So if I can flip him for a guy like Jacobs, I'm gonna do that. And then going from Addison to Diggs with a third, I like that because Diggs still has the upside to have meaningful elite production. Obviously, Addison has the value installation on his side, but I'm willing to take that a little bit of hit to me because I'm trying to
Hmm.
contend. So it kind of makes sense to me in the situation.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the way I broke it down, like just in my head, was like I to me the third and Roshan Johnson were essentially a wash, and I'd rather have Diggs and Jacobs package over Addison. So
Mm,
I definitely think that this was a great deal for, I mean, both of you because he does have an aging roster. So if he believes in
exactly. Yeah.
Addison, it's definitely a good deal for him to make. And he was kind of one of those teams that won the whole year, and then the one game he lost was the championship. So
Yeah.
he's still kind of chilling. He's not really worried, and he gets a little youth infusion onto his team.
Yeah. That value installation is nice.
Mm,
And then for this next one, it's another young receiver. You're heading into year two that I am looking to flip where I can. This one was made with my good friend Kigresto, dude. I appreciate you being in so many of my leagues. You're a rock star. And
hmm.
for this one, I gave up Zay Flowers, Elijah Moore, my 25 fourth, and 405. It's a 10-team league, so that 405 is a little bit more valuable than it would be in a 12-teamer. It's more like a late third. But in return, I got Calvin Ridley, who I clearly said is a buy, and is someone I'm very interested in purchasing. Terry McLaurin, who I also think is a buy compared to his value. I think he's going to outproduce that, or at least will be a solid contributor for a contender. And then James Conner, who is just a running back that I'm okay with having until the wheels fall off. He's cheap.
Hmm.
I traded for him multiple times last year on contending rosters, and his production is quality. I don't, there's question marks about whether or not what Arizona will do if they'll try to get rid of him, yada yada. But I just think James Conner is going to be back in Arizona next year, and I think he's going to have yet another year of solid production that vastly outweighs the cost that he has, which is the
No,
case
I
for
totally
so
agree.
many old running backs.
Hmm. And I think from a value standpoint, it was a pretty good haul for Zay Flowers because Zay is probably maybe not the most productive, at least in the short term, but he's definitely the most valuable. However, you got a good haul for a team contending, and just to give people some, like this is obviously going to spoil kind of tiny bit, but not really. If we look at our recent startup, Zay Flowers had gone at the 5'11, and Calvin Ridley went at the 9'10. Terry McLaurin went at somewhere in the seventh round. Yeah, the
The
7'4.
704. Yeah.
Yep. And then I picked James Conner at the 13-3. So in terms of value, it's pretty spot on in terms of the haul you kind of want to get because the fourths in Elijah Moore are just essentially all kind of throw in dart throws. I mean, it depends on how much you believe in Elijah Moore, but he went at the 14-12 in our draft. So it's kind of one of those things where if you're going to get rid of Zay Flowers, this is one of the ways to do it if you're contending because, you know, Ridley and McLaurin are, wide receiver twos, and that's exactly what Zay Flowers is. It's just they're older and they're less likely
Yeah,
to
but value
like
inflation is
they're kind of basically at this point you're acquiring them for them to die in your roster, and
yep.
hopefully it's a competitive roster because it's going to be very difficult to move off of any of these guys going forward for anything worthwhile.
Yeah, so like I
So I
won't be
de-
able to sell any of them for what I could sell Zay Flowers for,
Mhm.
which is what that value installation
Right.
is. That's on the value. It's the value installation that's on the Zay side.
Yeah. And honestly, I apologize if you mentioned it, but is Cogresto's team in this league rebuilding? Like, is he not in a good spot?
He's been contending the past couple of years, but I think he is
Hmm.
trying to at least reshape, maybe head into a
Retool it,
rebuild.
yeah.
Yeah, he's trying to retool for sure.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense then, because I think that this is a classic example of like two people in different team dynamics, and it kind of just fits value wise, and also it makes sense for both teams to make.
Yeah.
I definitely think that giving up three assets kind of sucks on his side because he could have potentially gotten maybe value for each of them individually. But at the same time, these guys are very difficult to acquire for, or excuse me, are hard to give up for anything really meaningful. So getting Zay Flowers as the most valuable, like, he's in the top 5 rounds of startups. I think that was a pretty good, thing for him to do.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, just to kind of recap the show for today, we did go very long today, so I hope all of you guys are listening and stayed through our rambling. I hope you guys found some, things useful. Obviously, if you guys have any trades that you would like for us to review, we could always do this with your stuff. So follow us at R&B Fantasy. It'll be down in the link on any of our socials, really, preferably our Twitter because that's our most active account as of right now. If you guys are listening on Spotify, thank you all for tuning in. Those of you on YouTube, please leave a like and subscribe, and make sure you guys hit that notification bell so you guys know when we drop stuff. Obviously, we'll release it on Twitter, so follow our socials because at this point, we want to build a community here. We're going to be dropping our Discord soon, so hopefully those of you that are interested can join that. Potentially get in some other startups, maybe not with us, but potentially other fellow Dynasty members that are in that Discord already. I'll let you kind of, give your ending remarks and we can kind of sign off.
If you watch this far, do me a favor, comment banana. That's all I want. That's all I want. I just want to see one
Yes.
banana comment. Just
Yes.
comment banana. That's all.
Or an emoji. That'd be even better.
Yeah, that works too. Whatever you want. Banana emoji, I don't care. Whatever. I just want to know if one person watched this whole thing and I want to see the comment. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in to the episode 2 of the R&B Fantasy. Obviously, follow us on our socials. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you all in the next video.
Peace.
Peace.